Welcome back, everyone, to Engadget's virtual CES 2021 stage. I'm reviews editor Sherlyn Lowe, and right now we have prepared for you a panel with Google and Microsoft representatives about accessibility in tech. Now, at CES, a lot of products are being announced in categories like cars, TVs, laptops, all kinds of things, and there are devices that are made for accessibility users as well, but it's not. I think it's important for us to also think about accessibility in all areas of tech and not just in these specific categories too. We want to be inclusive with product design. And so today I wanted to talk to, and I'm very excited to have two guests here today, starting with Microsoft's Chief Accessibility Officer, Jenny LaFleury. Jenny, how are you today?
Hi there, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be a part of this panel. I also have to just introduce very quickly Belinda, who's my ASL sign language interpreter, as I'm deaf. So just she'll be visible on the screen as we're talking through. And if I'm a little delayed, forgive it. It takes us a second to finish that in sign language before I can answer. But yes, thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Oh my gosh, thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. And yes, viewers, please, if there is a bit of a delay, that's not a buffer or a lag. Also joining us, and also I'm very happy to have join us today, is Brian Kemmler, the product manager for Android accessibility. Hi, Brian, how are you?
Hey, Sherlyn, very well. Thank you so much for giving myself and Google, as well as all the people who use our products, the opportunity to discuss a little bit more about what we're doing in accessibility.
Yeah, so I've spoken with both of you at length before, and I've really enjoyed our conversations in the past. And I wanted to put together this panel after that article that I managed to publish at the end of last year, because there was just so much that all three of us, I think, talked about that didn't make it into the article. And a format like this, I feel like gives us a bit more time to dig deeper into some of the issues. So before I get into some of those issues, I wanted to start with Brian. If you can kind of walk our viewer through, because not everyone knows what accessibility tools are currently available in the world of Android. Brian, do you want to give people a rundown of some of the tools, maybe just in the last year or so, that Google has introduced in the accessibility arena?
Yeah, sure. Sounds good. So I'll talk about some of the new tools that we've introduced first, and then I'll chat a little bit about some of kind of the staples as part of the platform. So for different people have different needs. And if you have deafness or if you're hard of hearing, we've done a lot of innovation in that field in the last 2 to 3 years, and we've launched some really cool products. So we launched one product called Live Transcribe, and what Live Transcribe does is it allows me to use my phone as a virtual transcription service, so I can hold it out when I'm having a conversation in real time in the real world with a person, and it will display captions on the screen. And so that's really helpful and really, really useful if you're not able to hear somebody in any kind of setting, whether it's a doctor's office, a doctor's visit, or through bank teller or your barista, that type of thing. We've also launched a similar feature on Android, which provides captions for any media on the device. So imagine your Instagram stream, imagine any social media or any content like TikTok or whatnot. And if there's media content, that media content probably doesn't have captions. And so using on-device speech recognition models, live caption is able to caption any media on an Android smartphone. So those are some of the new products. Older products that we've had that we continue to develop and build upon are things like TalkBack. TalkBack is our screen reader, and it makes all of Android as well as all Google apps and first-party and third-party apps available and accessible to people who either don't have sight or who have limited sight, so that they can interact and really perform any type of action on Android without actually looking at the display. And there's more, but
I'm sure there's plenty more. And thank you for giving us that brief rundown, because again, I'm an able-bodied person. I'm not fully aware of all the tools that are available, so it's good to hear from you. Jenny, we've spoken about this before too, and I just wanted you to pick maybe your favorite accessibility tools from Microsoft over the past few years. What do you think?
So, I mean, I love, Brian, what you're saying. I mean, accessibility is all about making sure that you have digital tools, particularly within our realm, tools that can empower you, whether that's at work, life, play. And I think it's been so important in the last 12 months, even more important than it already was, to use these tools, to have them easily and quickly available. My favorite, as someone who is deaf, I absolutely love the innovations that are happening in captioning. We're talking actually using Skype right now. I've got captioning running at the bottom of my screen. That's in Microsoft Teams. The accuracy of that captioning makes it reliant. I can use it for everyday use. And I just think that is so important. And it's just there, it's free, it's quick, and it's immediately available. So I think captioning is a really important innovation. I also love the diversity of features coming out. We have something called eye control just built into the core of Windows, which is the ability to move a mouse with just your eyes, powering kids that may have different disabilities, or people with ALS, which is where it came from. And that was our inspiration for the feature. So yeah, I think the diversification of features is also incredibly important.
We will, I think, get to some of the diversification in a little bit. But for now, Jenny, I also wanted, the viewer right now who might not have read the article to get a chance to know, what does the accessibility team at Microsoft look like? How do you operate?
So accessibility has been a core part of Microsoft for, over 20 years. And I've had the honor of being in this role for the last 5. And the core sort of makeup of the team is a gang of expert humans who are often people with disabilities bringing their expertise in, but they're also amazing technical, inclusive disability inclusion experts, just amazing in their own discipline, working towards a cohesive goal of making sure that everything that we do is inclusive. So it's a hub and spoke. My team sits in the core of Microsoft, and then we partner with every team across the company, whether that's Xbox or Office or Windows or our hiring areas, to make sure that we have an ecosystem of accessibility. So it's kind of the funnest, I think, coolest job that you can get, because we get to touch everything and learn from all of the experts. So whether you're a class 1 nerd that wants to work in Office and learn from there, or you're a wannabe gamer and you want to learn about Xbox and how to make gaming inclusive for people with disabilities, we get to touch all of that, which is just, it's a privilege.
I want to get into how that informs product design in a little bit, but Brian, can you tell us what the accessibility team at Google or Android look like?
Yeah, sure. So that was a great answer. It's great to see how many awesome things that Microsoft does with accessibility. On the Google side, accessibility is really part of our mission to make the world's information universally accessible and useful. And so we similarly have a central team, but we have other more diversified teams. And then literally every team that builds products at Google has to meet our internal standards or our internal requirements. And so and we take that really seriously. And part of that is just baked into our product development process. So, and part of our job for those of us who actually work on a specific accessibility team is sometimes we build products that are standalone products, like I mentioned before, live caption, live transcribe. Sometimes we advise internal teams on how to make their products more accessible so that anybody, regardless of what type of disability condition they may have, can use Android and can indeed use any and all Google products. So it's something we take very seriously. It's something our top everybody from Sundar at the CEO level down to any rank and file person at Google knows about, hears about, has training about, and is literally embedded in the product development process.
And you sort of touched on this, but I guess I wanted to be a bit more explicit about it. So at what stage in product design is accessibility sort of considered? Is it from the very beginning? Is it maybe later in the testing stage? What is that like at Google brand?
So we've evolved this over the years. It's very early on in the initial product development phases because typically what we've seen, and I'm sure Microsoft could validate this as well, if you start late in the game, you're going to get into trouble and you're not going to build something accessible. So by front loading this and by getting everybody to think about accessibility and to think about inclusion from the very, very, very beginning. And oh, by the way, at the end of that process, there's a lot of stuff that you need to go through, not in terms of just hand-wavy requirements, but in terms of actual concrete tests that your product has to get through, right? So that in every stage of that process, we are making sure our standard products are working. And then on the accessibility side, how we build products like TalkBack, how we build products like Live Caption, we partner directly with accessibility communities. So, I for one, I have good hearing, I have good sight, at least for now at this point in my life, right? And so how do I, as a product development professional, build empathy for the users for whom I'm building products? Well, that means developing and establishing and cultivating relationships with the communities for whom we're building, right? And testing the product, providing those people, those users with early access to that product, and getting their feedback and making changes on those on that feedback. So for each one of our products, we have groups of people who use them early, who provide us feedback, and in many cases build those products directly with us.
That's insightful and good to know. I wanted to ask Jenny the same thing. At what stage in Microsoft's product design is accessibility considered?
Yeah, Brian, I think you put it so well. If you do this at the end, you're not going to create good products and you're going to give yourself a real headache, right? And if you live and breathe the principles of inclusive design, which is that if you design with and for people with disabilities, you will quite simply create better products, then the onus has to be on right at the beginning. And so as you're creating that product, as you're looking at the vision of what you want to imagine, it's pulling in the right people to help making sure that you're designing with and through. I think one great example of that is the Xbox Adaptive Controller. This was something that was done as a hackathon project. It was a gang of amazing humans that came in, leaning on expertise from actually a NGO focused on veterans with disabilities and building gaming rigs for folks coming back from service. And over a couple of years, they iterated, I don't know how many different 3D printed versions of this thing. Eventually ended up being launched by Xbox as this cool standalone, affordable, adaptive device that's just there, and you can make it work no matter whether you're missing one finger, a thumb, or you're missing an arm or a leg, whatever it may be. We can make this thing work for you, and you can game, which is such an important element. Everyone deserves play. Everyone needs play. So I think that's the most beautiful example of inclusive design, of where you really take this in at the beginning. But I think that same thing works for everything, whether it's a standalone piece of hardware, or it's a widget, or it's a feature that's going into your next version of whatever your product is. So, just the principles of inclusive design are beautiful and really, really important.
I want to move on now kind of to look at what more we can do as an industry. And tech alone is so wide-ranging, so broad in scope that it feels like we're always going to be working on inclusive design. And so I wanted to hear your thoughts, and we'll start with Jenny. What are your thoughts on accessibility in emerging technologies like XR, for example? Is Microsoft looking at that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely, we're looking at that. I think, like with anything, when a new technology starts to evolve, it's really important to make sure that disability, from an inclusion perspective, is a key part of that. So whether it's looking at the data desert, which is in AI, how can we make sure that data from people with disability goes into AI, or it's making sure that new technologies like AR and MR are coming out, are inclusive. We're always looking to ensure that those are embedded beautifully in. And so those key principles of inclusive design, we kind of figure out the methodologies, the processes, the principles going in. And then it's kind of like, okay, now we've got the basics in place. Let's see what these things can do to help change paradigms. Digital technology, digital accessibility has the power to empower. And I think AR, MR is absolutely a great example of that. It can help with direction. It can help with specific guidance. We're seeing already the implications of it within one of our sort of great apps developed by one of our blind developers here called Seeing AI. But I think we've touched the surface bluntly of what's possible here. I think there's a lot more to learn.
Brian, what about you? How does Google approach emerging technologies like, say, whatever example you can come up with? I'm thinking VR and AR too, but how does Google approach accessibility on those areas?
Yeah, so we work very early on with our research team, and we have a very collaborative relationship. And so when new or emerging technologies come into existence, a lot of times those teams, even if they're not specifically working on accessibility, because accessibility is such a big part of the culture and people are really passionate about it, they'll come to us and they'll say, "Hey, we have this idea. Can we, could we do this like with with like a radar sensor, right? Like, could we enable hand gestures in the real world and things like that?" And many times these products come directly into fruition. And Live Transcribe is an example of that, where basically one of our engineers, Chet, and one of our research scientists, Dimitri, who's deaf, basically they had trouble communicating in the office, and Chet was like, "Hey, we have the ASR, and like, why can't I just build an app and plug the phone up to the ASR automatic speech transcription capability and see if that helps him communicate with Dimitri." And that's how live caption came into being. They also won an internal hackathon award. So it's just fun and funny to hear how similar we operate internally to Microsoft. And then I met up with those guys, and we figured out how to like bring this into the marketplace and to millions or tens of millions of users. And so it's really exciting. And whenever we see new technology, we just try to figure out how we can make the biggest difference for the people that use our products.
And that's a great story to hear. But I think there are still some overlooked areas in the disability spectrum and in accessibility that we've talked about on our interviews. But for this panel, Brian, what do you think are some areas of disability that still need to be looked at, and there's still a lot more work to be done?
So for one, there's always more work to be done. For two, right, we can always do a better job, right? And I think for three, we've done as an industry, I think we've done a fairly good job at addressing sort of single disability conditions, right? Like, if I'm blind, I can use a screen reader. If I'm deaf, I can use captions, or various other products. So I think in that respect, right, we've done a good job. But what if I'm both deaf and blind, right? So
Right.
no longer does the spoken output of the screen reader work, nor does the visual output of the captioning product work, right? And so I think when you overlay different disability conditions, you make the product development process much more difficult. And I think these are opportunities for us to, further innovate and do a better job, right? And so particularly for deafblind users, I would like to have much better deafblind support by way of Braille display, native as part of TalkBack, and whatnot. And there are a variety of other areas that I think we could improve too. But like multiple disability conditions is something that's very difficult and challenging to design for, and something that I have a lot of hope that we can improve as we move forward.
That's definitely one that came up from my interviews with different people in the community, that the intersectionality of disability is one that still remains to be addressed. Jenny, in our interview, you mentioned neurodiversity as one of the continually under or overlooked areas. Do you want to expand a bit more on that and share a bit more on what you think are some continually overlooked areas in disability?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a real year of learning in so many ways. A lot of what we knew a year ago has definitely evolved. If I look at a couple of areas, one being neurodiversity, another being mental health. Neurodiversity from a technology perspective, I think, is untapped. I think there's a lot more to learn. We have an incredible program manager in Microsoft Teams who actually created the hand raise button, which is, hey, I want to speak, but I'm not sure how to interrupt. So I'm going to hit a button and that gives a visual signal. I think that's a great example of how expertise from an individual with a disability can impact in technology, and also an example of a feature that is not just beneficial for him, but beneficial for everyone. It's always awkward to know, when do I get to speak, whether you have a disability or not. And I think we've also learned a lot about this from Immersive Reader, which is specific tools we have for dyslexia, and how we embed those more beautifully into technology. But I think the other area is mental health. Mental health this year has grown more than I've seen any other disability at any time. The Mental Health America numbers show that mental health screenings for anxiety and depression have gone up anywhere between 670% and nearly 900% year over year. And so features specifically to power people with mental health conditions, I think, has never been more important. It's going to be pretty exciting to see how we lean into that over the coming months and years.
And my next question, Brian sort of touched on in his answer, but Jenny, do you want to tell us some of the challenges, though, in designing to be more inclusive?
Well, I don't see them as challenges. I think that it's all it's like the coolest thing that you can possibly do. I think there's core principles to designing to be inclusive. I mean, the key thing to recognize here is that if you take this step and you really do embrace feedback from people with disabilities, you include in the process, you're gonna create better stuff. And also another key principle is if you don't know if it's accessible, it's not. So it's really just stupidly important to really invest time here to learn these skill sets. And it is about making sure that you have that bar of education, that people know where to go, how to get that feedback, how to bounce it off the right people, how to bring that in, and how to prioritize it. And then how to get the right support when you want to make sure that something like an adaptive controller, a 3D printed piece of gorgeous plastic, how can you get that into production? How could you get the packaging, which was the other element that team really grooved on, to just be something that's everything that comes out of Microsoft has this amazing, inclusive and sustainable packaging. So, I think there's definite methodologies to this and best practices. But the first is to really recognize this stuff isn't optional. It is incredibly important. I know, Brian, what do you think?
So, Brian, yeah, exactly. Sorry. Brian, I mean, it's okay. Brian, you did.
I couldn't.
Yeah, go ahead.
I couldn't agree. So I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I love the work that you guys have done on the Xbox controller. And I just think it's such a fantastic example of thinking about accessibility from the very beginning, right? Starting with the hardware, starting with the industrial design, and then moving forward into the software experience. Because if you're just talking about software, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's relatively easy. If you're talking about hardware and you're not considering industrial design, then it doesn't matter. All the good software in the world is not going to overcome that, lack of good industrial design or lack of thinking about diversity, inclusion, accessibility at the very beginning of that process, right? Software is easier to change than hardware, so I think that's really great, really great work and really great effort.
We're nearing the end of time for our panel, so I just wanted to ask my last question to both of you, starting with Brian. What are you hopeful for improvements in accessibility and inclusive design and technology in 2021 and beyond?
Yeah, I'm very hopeful. I think I've been working on accessibility and inclusive design now at Google for going on 4 years. And just in terms of that time, the number of launches, the number of people we've hired, the sort of prominence and importance that that accessibility has at Google at every single level of the company. And you can see it with the acceleration of all of these new launches and features and all of this innovation that we've done. It's just growing and it's just building momentum. And this was, look, last year was a hard year. And I think a lot of this year, we're going to be just trying to dig ourselves out, like humanity's digging itself out from 2020. But I think 2021 is a super hopeful year for me. And I see, our teams having adapted, having become much more flexible. And quite frankly, a lot of accessibility issues have come to the fore as a result of all of the drama that we've all been through. And that's given us kind of a new level of resiliency and focus and really kind of determination to make things better and to improve them.
I feel like I already know what Jenny is going to say, but Jenny, are you hopeful for improvements in accessibility in tech for the years ahead?
Yeah, I'm definitely a glass half full, but I also, painfully aware of where we are right now, which this last year has really, it's proven to us all just how important this space is. We're seeing unemployment at the levels that it's at, and for people with disabilities, that's double the rate of people without disabilities. A fierce dependence on accessibility as a means to access. And I think that's a responsibility we take incredibly seriously. And I'm really, what gets me excited is learning from my peers. I mean, I love, Brian, everything you're saying, but we work together in this. This isn't an area where we necessarily compete, and we do partner and really grow as an industry the capabilities so people can get free, easy, low affordable, and independent access to technology that's going to power. And so, I get really excited about the future, but let's be real, there is a lot to do, and it's really important.
You're absolutely right. I wish we had more time to continue this conversation, but unfortunately we are out of time today. Still though, this was an important topic. I wanted to make sure we spend some time on it. So I want to thank Brian and Jenny for joining us today. And remember, I think if you're watching this and you may be an able-bodied person or not, inclusive design, like Jenny said, doesn't just benefit special groups of people, select groups of people. It really benefits us all. So I think that that's one good thought to kind of close this panel with. Once again, Brian and Jenny, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for focusing on this. This is fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both so much. And for the viewer at home, make sure you keep it locked to Engadget.com. We have plenty more content coming up for you, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to Engadget's live stage at CES 2021. I'm Senior News Editor Richard Lawler, and I'm glad to be here with Chris Haynes from Yahoo Sports. Chris Haynes, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Chris is, if you don't know, you really should get familiar. Chris is one of the best NBA reporters out there. One of the few people who I have my Twitter alerts turned on for, just so that I don't miss any NBA free agency breaking news. And also was one of the few people outside of the league and the players itself who were invited and who spent several months in the NBA bubble down in Florida. You spent 106 days there, I think, in total, Chris?
Yeah, it was 106 days. I got there in late June. I was one of two media first to arrive there on campus, and this was about a week and a half before the players actually arrived there in the Orlando bubble. So I got to see it from start to finish. I got to see how they were getting things, manufactured, getting things built up, and just seeing how all these protocols and barriers are going to take place. And it ended up working fine. They were able to ultimately crown a champion, and that's what they wanted to accomplish.
Now, what were some of the most overt health and safety protocols that you observed during that time when you were in the bubble, in terms of the things they were using to protect everyone there, the players, the personnel, the media, like you said?
Yeah, that was really a scary time because obviously, there was a lot of unknowns as far as COVID, and you knew there were going to be some precautionary measures. Obviously, standing, 6 feet within somebody, that was in place all over the country. But going over there, they gave us these proximity tickers where if you had to wear them at all times, and if you got within 6 feet of someone, the buzzer will ring. And so you can imagine, like, at first when we got these buzzers, like, they were going off a lot, in that bubble. We had to get used to, just trying to talk and eat. We're on the buses going to and fro arenas, and, those ringers are going off. And so that was an adjustment period. And then obviously we had to take our temperature every single day. You take the temperature, and there was an app that the NBA provide us where we can input our temperature in the system. And then, you did that, and then you did your, there was a meter where there was a meter that they gave us as well, where it checked our, checked our blood levels and all that. And so if all your readings came back well on the app will give you a green color. And that green color meant you can go outside and you were free to roam. And if you didn't get that green, color on your app, you will get a visit from some from some specialist at your room. And I've never had that done, thankfully. But those were just kind of precautionary measures that they took to make sure that we were trying to be as safe as possible. And also, it was optional, but there was an Aura ring where you put on your finger, and it tracked your sleeping patterns, and just tried to create data, just try to get a better grasp on what we're actually dealing with. And so that was optional. So I didn't have that. I went in and I said, give me what I had to have, and I'll roll with that.
Gotcha. Just stick with the requirements. Now, I know that there was a memo apparently that leaked out that maybe the NBA will be requiring players to wear the proximity monitors again when they're in the team facilities or something like that. Have you heard anything about what they're doing there with bringing back kind of the proximity tracking and other things like that to do contact tracing?
Yeah, that's on the table. That's on the table right now. The league would prefer that the players do, wear those rings, but obviously, a lot of players I've talked to feel like that could potentially be a privacy violation. And, we're already seeing videos surfacing of certain players going out and being in restaurants and being in party venues where there's no mask. And so, you still got certain players who aren't following protocol. And I just think that they feel like I would just say this. A lot of players, they want this season to come back in February or March. And a lot of them were shocked when it was a December 22nd start. And so a lot of players feel like they're already being asked to do a lot, and now you want more to get this completed, get this season completed. And so, there's a lot of give and take right now that has to go on with the Players Association and the league. And so ultimately, we'll have to see what they decide on. But definitely, there's going to be some wrinkles when you're talking about the protocol.
Well, it's a very significant ask to change your lifestyle, not to mention just stuff like you experienced with going into the bubble. But now with this restarted NBA season where people have rules about where they can go, who they can be around, and everything that they're doing to try and keep the players safe. But also, people want to live their lives. And I think just like a lot of us, we're choosing to do things to try and do them the safe way. But it's hard to do that for an extended period of time. When you went through the bubble experience, was it at all kind of stressful coming out, or were you just happy to be home? Because obviously you were experiencing an environment where you were getting tested every day. Like you said, you had that report. I know some people mentioned that they had a bit of anxiety at first when it stopped because they didn't have their instant results every day, and they came back out to the world where some of us aren't getting tested, and people are just kind of mixing around.
Yeah, I can only speak for myself. I was ecstatic when I got out. I wasn't the most pleasant individual to be around, especially when you're talking about the last month and a half of that time over there. Let me just talk about the family dynamic. I don't mean to get too much on that, but the players, nobody was able to bring their families into the bubble until probably a month and a half, maybe 2 months out. And so, I have a wife and 4 kids, and I'm there. I knew I was there the duration of the whole time. And, at a certain point, you saw family, coming in. And, you see the NBA putting on their social media accounts how players are, getting reacquainted with their family members, seeing their sons, their daughters, their wives, their girlfriends. And, and the media, we weren't allowed to have anybody. It wasn't even an option. So just to see those families, coming together, it was beautiful for them, but it was kind of heart-wrenching for me. And so I was ecstatic when I got out. But I will say this. After doing all of those safety measures and doing all those testing every day, I forgot we were COVID tested every single day. It was like I would wake up in the morning when I was out, and I'm looking for my temperature reading. I'm looking for my app. I'm making sure I'm putting we had those proximity badges. Those are on our media access cards, and so we had to put those on around our necks every day. So I'm finding myself looking for that, at least the first week and a half, just looking for that, thinking about going to get tested, because there would be some times where you have to get tested by the end of the day. It didn't matter what time. You just had to make sure you get tested. And so I woke up, sometimes, when I was out, and I'm like, wow, did I get tested today? If I don't, I'm not going to be able to cover this game. So, there was a little bit of that, initially after I got out. But I was ecstatic to be out. It was tough. It was tough to be there for 3 months without seeing your family and, and to seeing other people get reacquainted with their family. It was tough.
There's a lot of challenges involved in that I can certainly relate to. Do you think that the NBA learned anything from the experience that is really helping them keep the players safe and maybe keep fans safe if and when, and I guess in some circumstances, already returning to the arenas?
That's a good question. I think if you look at what's going on in the NBA right now, where we're having a plethora of postponed games due to players testing positive for COVID-19, them doing back tracing on other players who might have been in close proximity to the ones who were tested positive for the virus. And I think what the NBA found out, or NBA discovered, is that if you isolate everybody, you put everybody in the same place, and you test every day, and you put these safety protocols in place, I think the league proved that ultimately what you want to accomplish can be accomplished if it is to finish out a season for a few months. The problem is it's very difficult to convince 450 players that they need to be isolated all in the same spot and be away from their family and friends. again. So I think that's the problem we're having right now with the NBA is that, look, they're still trying to implement some of those same rules and testing practices now, but as you see, players are free. Not as free to the extent that they were because there's still places that they can't go, but they are free. And we're seeing these tests, these positive tests, kind of ramp back up. Now, I will say this: the NBA saw this coming. They saw that when the holiday season was over, they felt like they were going to have a spike. So this was something that they intended to happen. And I will say this about the schedule: the NBA has only released the first half of the schedule, which goes up into early March, and then they were going to release the second half of the schedule somewhere close to March. The reason why they did that, they wanted to give themselves just enough cushion because they knew games were going to be postponed. So they want to, buy themselves enough time as much as possible. So then when it's time, they can reschedule some of those games and put them on the second half of the schedule. So the NBA is doing all they can right now, but I think what everybody noticed, and I think it was discovered during the bubble, is that if you want not a surefire, but if you want a close to surefire way of finishing out a season, the bubble is probably the safest way to go.
Now, I know from a fan experience, it was kind of weird watching bubble action and even this restarted season, watching players play in empty gyms. Did you hear from the players about how the experience was different playing without fans? Or how was the experience different from you covering the game, where you can't get within 6 feet of the players now and you're in the kind of a completely different environment?
Yeah, so let's talk about the bubble real quick. So the bubble, that was obviously just a wake-up call from the players. They knew they were going to go into the bubble with no fans, but when they actually got there on the court, and they're so used to just having the fans really pump them up, especially when teams go on runs. When you go on runs, you got the fans kind of motivate you more to extend it out, and that wasn't the case. And you got these fake, artificial, loud, piped-in video game fan chants, and it's not the same. You kind of look at the players' reaction, and they're not really reacting to it at all. So that was different. But when I was in the bubble, the access for those that were in there in the green zone was pretty good. We were right there on the court. You got to hear a lot of what was being said on the court, so that kind of helps with your game coverage when you're writing stories. But now the way it's situated now, as far as the access we have, is really no access. We don't have. There's a Zoom call. That's all it is, and there's no access to players. There's no locker room access. There's none of that. And so we're really this is really a new landscape that we're trying to navigate through and trying to figure out what's the best way to go about our jobs. And it's tough. It's tough. And for players, look, there's some players that I know for sure who are really loving this new way of life and not having to deal with the media. So look, I can't knock that, but for us in my profession, it's a tough time we're trying to navigate, and hopefully things will get back to normal soon. But I don't think we'll ever get back to the normal access that we used to have as far as going in locker rooms and things of that nature. I think that's probably going to be shut off for good.
Some things, the more they change, the more they stay the same. Right before we started, I saw a clip of, I think, Danny Green from the night before, where he was walking up the court and somebody was heckling him for going 0 of 10. And he responded saying that he has 3 championship rings. So,
that's all he said?
I guess, I think he said a little bit more than that. But at least heckling has somehow survived the pandemic. Now,
I saw
the fans could not heckle them in the bubble, but they did get into there on the video screens. They were logging in via Microsoft Teams. They were kind of in there. Was that something that you noticed when you were in the arena at all, or did the players respond to it all? You said that they kind of just tuned out the video game sounds.
Yeah, so that's a rare example right there. And so there's about, I think we're only about around 4 teams now that are allowing some capacity of fans to be in the arenas. So that right there, that interaction right there is not the norm. I can't remember what team they were playing, but that's not the norm right there. So we still, I'm look, even though it was negative criticism, I mean, look, I think Danny Green, I think he would even agree that, that's fair. That's fair criticism right there. That's fair chant right there. To hear somebody, calling you out for your performance or not shooting well. Well, he probably misses it. He probably misses it. Because one thing about fans, they get you riled up. Whether you at home, you get the riled up to play well, or if you're on the road, depending on what type of player you are. If you're a dog, you can kind of use that for motivation. So I think from some form or fashion, I think a lot of players miss those fan interactions, whether they be negative or positive.
Yeah, who was that? CJ up in Portland. He has been going off this season. Like, I don't think he cares whether there are fans in the arena or not. He's just ready to go all the time. Were there any other players that they kind of stuck out to you with their performance, either in that it changed without fans, that it just didn't change at all? Just they're the same guy all the time.
It's funny. I saw Jason Tatum of the Boston Celtics. He did an interview. I believe it was, God, I don't want to say the wrong platform, so I won't do that. So excuse me for omitting that. But he said he remember when he was in a bubble, and there were certain guys that were just, basically killing. And he was like, hold on, like, you didn't do this during the regular season. Like, this is not you. Like, where is this coming from? And so there are guys, like, I think I know who he's talking about. Should I say who I think it is? I'll leave that alone. I don't want to speculate. But, there were players. Just look at the, I would say this, just to give people a hint if they want to look it up. Look at the top 5 scores, top 6. Look at the top 6 leading scorers in the bubble during the regular season, during the seeding games, I should say. And there should be a name right there that sticks out that's
MJ Warren.
Normally not in that
that was my guy, man. I hope he gets back soon from his broken foot and can continue his very high level of play.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's him or it ain't him, but hey, look, man, you're a smart young man. You're a smart, wise young man. But no, there were players out there that were balling, and people felt like, look, those are the type of players that, when it comes to the regular season, when fans are there, you can kind of see a discrepancy in their performance when they're at home, opposed to when they're away. But when you're on the bubble, there's no home court advantage. And so it's kind of like, really like they say, it's pickup ball. You just play your game, and there's not that added pressure. And so, those are some things that you definitely saw.
Certainly. Now, usually, kind of, even when there's a regular season going on, you have a much better angle of the action than most fans get. You get up close, you get to see these guys, you get to see how really impressive they are. With the bubble, and even in these new games, they've changed the camera angles a bit. Sometimes we see things from a lower angle. I know they experimented with some things like virtual reality, social experiences. What do you think about how this changes the fan experience? Do you think there are things that the fans will notice now that maybe they missed before? Or have you seen anything different when you're watching games?
I don't know if there's anything necessarily that the fan has missed. I think they've gained some things. But when you're talking about, you hit it head on when you talk about the different camera angles, and particularly the sideline camera, the camera that goes back and forth. That's a good angle. I kind of like it. It's fine. And it gets you up close. It's like you're sitting courtside. But the problem with that is, like, if we ever get back to the point where we do have fans in the arena, I don't know. I don't see how you can have that camera right there sitting in front of people who actually are paying for those courtside seats. So I think that's a camera angle that might, disappear. With that being said, some other things the NBA is trying to do to just get innovative, and with that, with the fact of not having fans in the arena is, I know for us at Yahoo Sports, we did virtual reality, broadcasting, some of these games where fans could watch the games, with their avatar. And the League Pass, NBA League Pass, has done something similar as well. So there's things that they've done to try to get innovative, like watching a game live with a former NBA player where you can text and communicate with that player during the game. So those are things, and you pay a certain fee for each game. And so those are things the NBA was trying to do, especially try to make up from the revenue loss from fans, which is about 40% of their revenue, which is a large portion. So, they're just trying to experiment and use this time to try to boast their reach on, getting their product to the fans, because things have changed. Everybody's not watching on TV anymore, so they're just trying to figure things out. But look, I don't know if there's anything out there that's going to be a real mainstay, but I think right now what the NBA is doing is trying to discover other ways and alternative ways of reaching the fan.
And from your perspective as a member of the media, how different is it now that you're back at home and you're covering, people through Zoom calls? You're maybe trying to get your contacts so that you can get that free agency breaking news without actually being able to bump into people or see them walking down a hallway. Like how different is that now?
Well, look, it's obviously different. I've been to 3 games thus far. I went to a Warriors game, Sacramento Kings game, and a Laker game. And you're not allowed to go down there where the players at, where the GMs are at. But, I would say this, for somebody, this is my 10th year covering the league. So I've established some contacts to where, I don't necessarily have to be at the game to get to who I want, whether that's a player or management or agent. And so that helps. But there's no doubt about it. We're taking a big loss. When I mean I'm talking about my profession. We're taking a big loss of not being able to go to the games and, talk to people like in person. It's one thing to be on the phone or texting, but, have those engaging conversations and, because a lot of info comes from those conversations, a lot of, still building bonds. And, as far as the rookies, we haven't been able to gain a rapport with them. We haven't been able to establish relationships with them. So meanwhile, we may have relationships with the other players, the veteran players, the GMs and agents, but, we're missing the mark when it comes to the rookies. So, that's tough, but, it helps, like, if you've been able to kind of establish yourself and establish your clientele, your connects, if you've been able to do it prior to this, because that's going to help you with your coverage as we get through this. So obviously, there's nothing better than being in person, talking face to face.
And you mentioned how the players are kind of responding to this very quickly restarted season and all the stress that they have to go through. Have you heard anything from kind of team personnel or league personnel, from Adam Silver on down, I guess, about how the restarted season is going? And you mentioned that they did anticipate a spike in cases after the holiday break, but it feels like a lot is happening all at once. Like what's kind of the feeling around the league about this season and how it's going?
Look, that's the one thing that they're being very mum right now during this process. But I will say this. They put out a statement a few days ago and said, this was anticipated to having these spikes. But I will say this. It has to be a red flag to that, because over the last couple of days, there's been multiple meetings, board of governor meetings with the owners, board of governor meetings within themselves, the Players Association talking to the league. And so it's a little bit more serious than what the league wants to let on, because we're just having all these meetings all of a sudden, and there's more postponements, like just all in a lump sum within the last week. So there are some issues. I don't think they predicted it to be like this rapid so far. And then you got guys that, and I think they felt like you were gonna have guys that kind of broke the rules or went out and were seen around. But the guys that have done that have been face of the franchise type players. It's one thing to suspend somebody probably named Daniel House, but when you have a James Harden that's out there, you see him out and about wherever he's at, not wearing a mask. When you see Kyrie Irving out, not wearing a mask around a lot of people, that doesn't look good for your league. That doesn't shine well. That doesn't bode well. So, I think the league is not letting on as far as how serious this thing is right now. And we don't know. And we can all, the league anticipates that the things will go back down. We'll see. But I think in order for numbers to go back down, players, management, team execs, team personnel all have to abide by the rule. And if that's not the case, we'll continue to see spikes. And so I think that's what needs to hit home to when you're talking to the players and these team officials.
It's a very unique challenge that they're facing. Thank you so much for joining me. Folks, this is my guest, Chris Haynes. You can find him on Twitter at Crispy Haynes. I'm Richard Lawler. You can find me on Twitter at RJCC. And next up, we'll have Devendra Hardawar talking to ASUS about the future of gaming laptops. Thank you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Engadget's live CES 2021 coverage. I'm Senior Editor Devendra Hardwar, and tonight for this session, we will be talking about the future of gaming laptops with Jeff Kampman from ASUS ROG. How are you doing, Jeff? Thank you for joining.
Hey Devendra, thank you for having me. I'm doing really well today. I'm really pumped.
Yeah,
it's so exciting.
I mean, it's a big day for you guys, right? Because you just announced several new laptops running on the new NVIDIA hardware too. Everyone's excited about what a lot of this means for upcoming gaming laptops. There's also the new AMD chips. What are you excited about that's coming from ASUS ROG?
Well, I have to say everything, but the particular, the combination of the new AMD chips and the new NVIDIA GPUs has those basic building blocks have allowed us to do so much. So we've taken that basic architecture and we've reconsidered the form factor of the gaming laptop in a couple different ways. And the system I think everybody's the most excited about is the ROG Flow X13, which is our first 2-in-1 convertible gaming laptop. And that system by default has the AMD Ryzen, a new Ryzen CPU unit, a GTX 1650. Within the body of the laptop, but it also includes our new, you can get it with rather the XG Mobile GPU, which is a proprietary eGPU with up to an NVIDIA RTX 3080 that communicates over a PCI Express by 8 link for much more bandwidth than Thunderbolt 3.
Let me just say, this thing looks wild too. So the X13 is a 13-inch ultra portable. It's very light. I believe you guys are saying it's 2.8 pounds. It's also a convertible, so you can move the screen all the way around, like a lot of the other laptops these days, like Lenovo's Yoga line in particular. And that's a really interesting thing you guys are doing by both giving it, GTX 1650, not too bad. You could play some basic games with that, especially for gaming on the go. But the option of an eGPU with this one is kind of it's unique too, because it's a proprietary connector. It's PCI 3 basically. You guys are just getting the full speeds there. Can you talk about what went into ASUS's thinking as it was developing this, right? Because I feel like I've seen slim 13-inch gaming notebooks from other companies like Razer. I've never quite been super satisfied with them. They are always about compromises. Is that why you guys thought like you got to have an eGPU option?
So it's interesting you bring up compromises, because one of the ways we approach things at ROG is we don't want to compromise for gamers. And like all the eGPUs as a concept are really neat. I love the idea of being able to take a slim gaming laptop and then just plug it into a powerful graphics chip when I need it. But again, Thunderbolt 3 it's fine for a lot of things, but it limits GPU performance. And also, when you look at most eGPU boxes, they're rather large and bulky. It's not something you can easily take with you. And so this, we've done two things here to kind of avoid those compromises. The eGPU itself is much more compact than the average box. It's about the size of a really large paperback book. And to make that happen, it's like we use a custom vapor chamber cooling system in there. And then again, that proprietary interface enables higher performance. So we've taken that idea of, take a slim laptop with you and paired it with that no compromises ideal. And that I think comes together in a really compelling package.
Yeah. It's it also seems like a smart follow-up for you guys from the Zephyrus G14 last year, which that was one of my favorite gaming laptops. It was something I just kept going back to throughout the year because it was super light. It was 3.5 pounds. It was still pretty portable. It had enough power. It had RTX 2060, and it was one of the first with the AMD Ryzen 4000 GPUs, and it kind of just set the stage for what we would expect from the rest of 2020. So going into 2021, it seems like, you guys are trying to one up yourselves here. Can you tell me anything else about the X13?
Again, you're saying it's, the G14, we really loved that notebook. It set a new standard for portable gaming laptops. And the X13 is just that much more portable, because you have to remember that this is almost like you said, it's almost like a thin and light notebook, but this still has the full Ryzen HS processor in it. It's the 35 watt, 8 core, 16 thread CPU. So, it's all that same processing power in an even more compact body. So it's right. So again, the power in here, at least for CPU intensive tasks, is just incredible.
Yeah, and also just yesterday, Intel announced their new H series chips too, but also not the fully powerful, not the 8 core ones. They were announcing these 4 core chips, for ultra portable gaming laptops too. It does kind of seem like that is what AMD was already delivering last year. Are you guys looking at these the newer H series chips, the quad cores, in terms of putting them in any new machines, or are you more satisfied with what AMD is doing? Yeah.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Like obviously, I can't comment on future products, but we'll have we have more to announce at CES 2021, and yeah, stay tuned.
Stay tuned. I mean, listen, we all know ASUS has another event tomorrow where we're going to see a lot more new laptops as well. And those are going to be the consumer line, so the ZenBooks and stuff. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. You guys also announced a new, I guess, a special edition of the Zephyrus Duo 15, the huge gaming laptop with dual screens. And now it's powered by AMD chips as well. How much of an upgrade is this over the one last year? Because we really liked the last Zephyrus Duo.
So I think with the new Ryzen 5000 series CPUs, you're going to see a significant performance uplift. Simply because the performance per core is higher. There's other stuff happening with this too, though. We have a new 4K 120 hertz display option. So we're taking up until this point, creator laptops. Or laptops with 4K displays, rather, you have a 4K display at 60 hertz. And to get that high refresh rate gaming performance that a lot of demanding people want, you had to drop down to 1080p. And now we have this option that encompasses full Adobe RGB. We have 4K, we have 120 hertz, we have variable refresh rates, all in one screen. And so that's a huge upgrade there. And obviously the new NVIDIA 30 series graphics as well. So I think it'll be a pretty substantial. Yeah.
When it comes to the Zephyrus Duo as well, we haven't talked much about the screen pad, and I do think that is, that's the unique thing you guys have been doing with both the ZenBook Duo and the Zephyrus Duo. Is anything changing with the ScreenPad Plus? Can you do anything different with it? I think you guys have talked about some software upgrades. How is it going to function differently than last year's Zephyrus Duo?
So we'll have more detail on this soon. There is, however, I think in terms of the hardware, what we're doing this year with the Zephyrus Duo SE is we're making this more accessible, because there's a 1920 by 1080 display option for this notebook now as well. And, we're also taking the ScreenPad Plus down a little bit to make it more attainable. So that'll be available to more users. And like you said, I think ASUS is really driving this innovation in the dual display laptop space. There's really nothing else quite like this out there. So getting this in more hands is super valuable, I think, because everybody who uses this immediately sees the utility in it. I think a lot of creators, a lot of streamers who love that multi-display setup on their desks just immediately take this like ducks to water. So I'm excited to see it in more users' hands.
Gotcha. Great. And you were just talking about the new 4K 120 hertz panels. Those sound exciting, but honestly, as a gamer and like a very practical gamer, I am not quite a believer in 4K on mobile. It just seems like you're generating so much power to produce these pixels that you will never actually see. I think a better compromise this year is we're seeing a lot more Quad HD 1440p displays. Are you guys looking? Are you implementing those in the rest of your lineup too?
Yeah, our display lineup this year is, I think, better than ever. The 17-inch, the Scar 17, our top esports gaming laptop, is getting a 360 hertz 1920 by 1080 display with adaptive sync. We are also bringing those Quad HD 165 hertz panels to more laptops this year as well.
Very nice.
So
very nice.
Yeah, that balanced. I agree that balanced resolution is really nice because it still lets you take advantage of all your hardware's performance, especially with adaptive sync, without going over the top.
Without going.
And we started also. We started last year. I was just going to say we started with Quad HD last year with the Zephyrus G14 with that high-res 60 hertz option with adaptive sync. And again, we're just taking it up a notch this year. The 14-inch panel and the G14 is getting up to 120 hertz with Quad HD. And Yeah, and our larger gaming notebooks are getting the 165 hertz option.
You're saying that so that for this year the G14 is going to get 120 hertz quad HD. That sounds pretty cool. And just for everybody watching and listening here, what are we talking about? So 1080p screens it's just full HD. It is the first one of the first HD standards we got when HDTV started rolling out. And what's been happening on gaming laptops and gaming monitors is that they've been sticking with that resolution, but upping the refresh rate so that you can actually see higher frame rates on those screens. And now, you're all the way up to 360 hertz. So that's astounding. Will lead to a lot of smooth gameplay. I don't know. I do think there is kind of a tipping point when your eyes actually start to determine the difference. Like maybe hardcore esports gamers really will see something different between 240 hertz and 360 hertz. For me, like 120 is like, okay, I'm good here. Like, and if I can get enough performance to get to 120, I'm good. So if you're talking about quad HD screens, which have a higher resolution than 1080p, not quite as high as 4K, but quad HD at 165 hertz, like that sounds like a sweet spot for a lot of gamers, honestly. Yeah.
And more options are great. You can get whatever you prefer. So,
is there, I know ROG's lineup is always, you guys have a huge array of models. You have, thicker, heavier computer laptops for people who don't need portability because you can stuff more power into there. Is there anything more, you guys think you can do this year thanks to the RTX 30 series or the new Ryzen 5000 series? What are these laptops, achieving now that we couldn't last year?
I think just in general, again, like Moore's law may be slowing down, but there's still always improvements in performance per watt. And in a highly constrained system like a laptop where every watt matters, like if you can save a watt somewhere, you can put it somewhere else, or you can make the system run cooler and quieter. And I think just having these great building blocks to work with from our partners, you're just going to enjoy better performance and better battery life. And, just across the board, that rising tide is going to lift the entire performance of these systems. So
gotcha. And I'm sure you guys are experimenting with a lot of different, form factors or new things. Like I didn't see the X13 coming at all. Like that just seemed like a wild thing for you. I'm sure you can't talk about future products, but ideally, given you've been in this industry for a while, I assume you've seen the landscape change, and we're getting more power available to us, more efficient chips. What do you think gaming laptops need to do, over the next 5 years to really stay relevant and to evolve from what they currently are?
So the way things are progressing, the way things are evolving, like you said, ROG experiments all the time with these innovative form factors. Like the ROG mothership from a couple years ago was, we just turned that traditional laptop concept on its head and created this freestanding system that could draw air through its back panel instead of having to try and breathe through that couple millimeters underneath a notebook, for example. We have the X13 now, which is a 2-in-1 gaming laptop. With touch and pen support. So that's a lot closer to the everyday notebook. And the Zephyrus Duo 15 brings dual screen productivity to the gaming laptop form factor without appreciably increasing the size and weight. So we're increasingly progressing towards a point where I think the distinction between a gaming laptop and a regular laptop is, that line is going to continue to blur because you have these systems that there are no compromise. They are not just for gaming. They're great for content creation as well. The X13 is, a highly ultra portable system. And, it's just a portable laptop. You don't have to think about the fact that it's gaming ready.
Right.
You can, and when you want to take that gaming power with you, you can just throw the eGPU in the bag. So I think that line is just going to continue to blur, and we're going to continue exploring all these new form factors that enable these new experiences.
Gotcha. And just judging from what we're seeing from other manufacturers too, I do think that is the case. Like we're just seeing more and more ultra portables that can do a lot more. And I think, hey, we've reviewed plenty of systems with Intel's Xe graphics. Even Intel is really kicking things up a notch on the graphics front. You know, I'm really wondering, like, at ASUS, how do you guys think of your ZenBooks now versus the ROG machines? Because it does seem like, I look at something like the ZenBook Pro 15, which has a decent GPU in there too, or the ZenBook Pro Duo has a decent GPU. Why is that a productivity laptop and not a gaming laptop, right?
Right. Well, there's, you know, like we were saying, you know, the lines are blurring a little bit. There's always going to be, I think, a demand for this kind of creator notebook, like especially with NVIDIA Studio drivers, or, you know, maybe a OLED panel, especially. I think that's going to be something you're going to be seeing as a deciding factor in our systems. The ZenBook Pro Duo you mentioned, that already uses an OLED screen at 60 hertz. And, you know, that's just spectacular for HDR reproduction, which is, you know, something we'll freely admit, it's not something that's really easy to do in a gaming laptop screen yet.
Yep.
So for people in the creative side who are still trying to push the limits there, you know, we're always going to try and serve those different audiences as best we can. And so you know, right.
You had mentioned HDR too, which I think is more and more on the console front has become, you know, kind of a nice benefit to have. The Xbox Series X has automatic HDR using, you know, Microsoft's machine learning tech. And I think that's done a lot to really even make older games feel better and more playable. What is holding HDR back on the laptop front? Is it just the sheer amount of power it takes to, you know, make a screen brighter?
So, yeah, I think that is a significant part of the challenge, because last year at CES, one of the neater demos that we were able to do was a mini LED panel for a laptop. So instead of having that global backlight, which, you know, as a component, you can kind of control the power consumption of more easily. You know, you have these huge arrays of LEDs, and it looks amazing. Don't get me wrong, but, you know, the more components you add, each of those has to draw power. The power management becomes more complicated. And it's something we're continuing to explore and reckon with. But yeah, power is a huge concern, obviously, with notebooks, and we don't want to compromise anything else about the experience.
For sure. I get that. And it does seem like mini LED tech is the new display tech a lot of people are really talking about now. We're seeing more TV manufacturers bring it in. It basically gives you much smaller backlights for LCDs than traditional LED backlights. Given the power issue, like, will we be seeing more of these in ASUS laptops in the future? Because battery life is a big concern, but I also want that nice bright performance sometimes when I choose to have it. Mm-hmm.
Like I said, it's a continuing balancing act. It's something we're exploring. Like we had the prototype last year, and when we crack it, we'll have more to share.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And we're talking about all this and the concern of battery life too. I was really impressed with the G14 last year and just how efficient it was battery wise. It gave me more battery life than some productivity laptops I've been testing recently too. Is that just really down to what AMD was able to accomplish with the Ryzen chips last year? Are we expecting similar decent battery performance this year with 5000?
I think it played a large role in that. The G14 also has a large battery for its size. But I think AMD, if you follow AMD closely, they are, they're laser focused on power consumption and efficiency. I think they have an initiative called, I forget what it's called exactly, but there is a continuing focus there to reduce power consumption, increase efficiency, and I think that'll pay dividends over time. We were already, you've already seen it with the Ryzen 4000, and I think we'll see great things from battery life in our laptops for 2021 as well.
It is nice to see the industry kind of changing so much too. Do you feel like we're better served now that AMD is taking a bigger stance in laptops? Because 2 or 3 years ago, that wasn't the case, and it was kind of all Intel all the time. Is this competition actually leading to better computers on the gaming front?
Yeah, I think so. And then again, as a PC enthusiast, more options are always a good thing. It's one of the great things about the platform. That openness and flexibility is that you can get what you need at the price you want. And just having more options is, it's always a good thing. So, and, they drive each other forward, and we all reap the benefits.
Gotcha. I'm thinking about what else I'd like to see in my ideal perfect ultra portable, which will probably look a lot like the G14, but maybe with a webcam. And I know we've seen mechanical keyboards on some heavier, thicker gaming laptops, like the really serious ones. But what is keyboard tech is something that I think really matters, especially if your keyboard's your main gaming interface. How is ASUS and ROG thinking about that? Will we ever see like a mechanical equivalent in a thinner, lighter notebook?
So it's funny you mentioned that, because I think on the ROG Strix Scar 17 and 15 that are coming out this year, we're actually introducing a new optical mechanical keyboard. And we talk about the thickness of mechanical key switches. And actually, one of the neat things about the optical keyboard is that I think it's thinner overall, while still, and it lets us maintain that same good key feel that you expect from that mechanical keyboard. So that is an area of innovation for us as well. And, so that experience, just keep an eye open for it.
I would love to test those at some point, so I'm probably going to check out and see what's available for review. Just thinking, we're coming off of a fall where the new gaming consoles kind of were the things everybody was talking about, right? And it started to make clear, like, hey, for a while, that PC gaming has led the way, has been forward, and then all of a sudden, Microsoft and Sony are coming in with newer, faster SSDs, right? Then were available to most PC gamers. Kind of the equivalent of stuff we would be seeing with PCI 4.0. Have the new consoles at all changed the way ASUS is thinking about what it's actually delivering? Like the fast load times on the PS5 is something I still cannot achieve on a gaming PC. No matter how fast of an SSD I put in there. Is it revealing some deficiencies or some upgrades that the PC industry needs to make too?
I mean, I think, every time a bar is raised, you're going to see people rise to meet it. So, the console, if the consoles have improved that architecture, then, again, that's a new bar, that's a new shift in the industry. And I think, SSD manufacturers will have to be aware of that. System architects will have to be aware of that. And, it's not something like that we may see change in the immediate term, but again, I think we are relentlessly in pursuit of more performance, and every time the bar is raised, that's just a new frontier to conquer. So.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I do like the back and forth between console gaming and PC gaming, because these consoles now are just basically super fast gaming PCs, but fast gaming PCs that cost $500, which is kind of a wild thing. I want actual PC, gaming equivalent towers to come down to that price. So looking forward to seeing that. Well, thank you so much, Jeff, for telling us about what ASUS is working on and talk about the future of the industry. Where can we find you on the internet these days if people want to see more of your thoughts?
So I would encourage everybody to check out the content at rog.asus.com, which is where we publish all of our articles about internal projects like these. You'll learn more about our products there, including all of the details of our new gaming laptop lineup. And I'm on Twitter at @jcampman if you want to chat with me there.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just saw your tweet. So I will follow you back. And you guys can find me at @Devindra on Twitter. Stay tuned to Engadget.com for more live coverage of CES 2021. Next up, we're going to have a discussion about Sonos and the future of music streaming. Thanks for joining us, folks.
Hello, welcome back to Engadget's live ongoing coverage of the virtual CES 2021. I'm joined today by Ryan Taylor, who is the general manager over at Sonos of Sonos Radio, the company's first streaming music service. Thanks for joining us, Ryan.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
Where are you calling in from today?
I'm calling in from sunny Santa Barbara. It's pretty nice to be out here on the West Coast sometimes, even though things are a little bit crazy.
Yeah, well, thanks again for joining us. And we've got a lot to talk about, as I feel like Sonos has had a really busy, year and a half or so. Specifically, there's the new radio product, but you launched a couple new speakers in the last year, the Arc and the Move. Can you maybe just talk about like overall how like these products fit together, where you see radio sort of complementing the hardware that you guys are better known for making?
Yeah, totally. I mean, 2020 was a big year. It was an odd year for all of us, but the things we put in place, take a couple years to come to fruition in some cases. And so we had some great product launches last year. We launched our Arc in June of last year. An amazing Dolby Atmos enabled soundbar, which we're really proud of. And if you haven't heard it, it's fantastic. And we launched Sonos Radio in April of last year too, which is our first, obviously service, consumer service direct. And so it's been a really interesting year for us as we kind of learn how to evolve the Sonos business and continue to deliver amazing sound experiences for our owners.
Yeah, and you guys are, like I said, mostly known for hardware. It's the first software product that you're getting into. Can you talk a little bit, I guess, like where did the germ for this idea come from? And what did you have to do over the, I think you said it took a couple of years to get it up and running. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, so ultimately it all starts with trying to create an amazing sound experience for our users, right? So at the end of the day, one of the things that we recognized was that just a ton of time is spent listening to radio on Sonos, right? We have an awesome platform with more than 100 partners around the world that bring their services to the Sonos ecosystem, which we continue to invest in and grow from a platform perspective. But we noticed just a ton of usage and listening happening on radio, and we were thinking to ourselves, how could we really kind of elevate this experience, bring the right content to our users in a quick and easy way, and also bring a bit of the Sonos point of view in content to our users alongside that. And so we saw an opportunity to, it's interesting. We had been doing a lot of work in the kind of music curation and artist relation space for years, and one of the things that we would hear was, "Hey, I want to do a collaboration with you, Sonos," and we'd have to say, "I'm sorry, go talk to one of our partners because we don't do that," right? And so ultimately, it started as a way to help tell artist stories and help participate with the artist partners we work with from marketing or just from a cultural perspective, and really bring those stories to life. And so Sonos Radio was a platform for us to be able to do that, kind of bring the Sonos brand to life through content itself and through some original content as well. But then also, build a platform where we can, bring partner content directly to our users through Sonos Radio as well.
Yeah, that's a good way to sum it up. And just to give our viewers a quick overview if they haven't used it, Sonos Radio has kind of three main components, right? You can stream basically any FM station that you can access on a regular radio, regardless of where you live. There's custom curated Sonos stations for different genres and kind of moods, that sort of thing. And then you've got like the sound system, right? That's your sort of flagship channel.
Yeah, thanks for doing my job for me. I probably should have started.
That's all right.
But ultimately, it's Sonos stations that we create and we bring to our users. But it's also an ability to listen to FM broadcasts and even kind of homegrown stations from around the world through a single, easy to use interface on the Sonos app.
So it's global FM, really?
That's correct. So
there's from anywhere around the world.
That's correct. There's radio stations from all around the world powered by our partners. So we work today. We work with TuneIn, iHeart Radio in the U.S., Radio.com in the U.S., Global out of the U.K., and quite a few more partners that we're working with to go forward.
Yeah, and what's kind of unique about Sonos Radio compared to other sort of streaming platforms is that this is only available on Sonos products, which means it's only really available in your home. How did you guys get to the place where you felt confident that you could launch a product like this without it being available like on your smartphone for when you're on the go or in the car? And does that change how you think about the programming that you curate for it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important to kind of state that like ultimately this is complementary to the Sonos platform, right? Our goal was to deliver an awesome out of the box experience where we can get people into listening to something that's relevant for them, sounds great, is a great experience for them to kind of get started on their Sonos experience with. So kind of contributing to that out of the box experience is really important for us. And ultimately, Sonos as a platform today, is a home-based product. It only works in your home. We have a product called Sonos Move, which we, as you mentioned, launched last year, which starts to take the Sonos experience outside of the home. But ultimately, we wanted to make sure that we had that really great out-of-the-box experience to get people listening to content they love and really hearing the sound quality that Sonos can bring to the table right out of the box. In terms of how that influences programming, it's a really interesting question because Sonos is a product that's is always listened to out loud, right? It's always listened to in a shared context, and so when we think about creating radio stations, for Sonos Radio, it's really about creating a consistent atmosphere and vibe for each station to really keep people in the right mood. It's designed to deliver longer listening sessions for users so they can just put something on and just press play and listen to it for a long period of time. So it actually does quite regularly influence how we think about new stations that we want to create or new content we want to program, because it's really all about setting the right atmosphere for the home environment in a shared context.
And you have a bunch of stations that I believe are specifically just music from, like I said, genres or moods. There's holiday stations, there's different genres, that sort of thing. Then you have ones that are curated by artists like Tom York's station, right? Those are kind of a mix of maybe interviews and spoken content along with the music. Is that right?
Yeah, it's really up to the artist in terms of how they want to present their ideas, right? So ultimately, our goal is to create a platform for them to be able to tell stories or just share music. In some cases, artists don't really want you to hear their voice. They want you to hear the music that they're selecting and to kind of push their audience in a new direction. I think, for example, one of my favorite stations is from Third Man Records, which is Third Man Public Address System. And it's really like the stories behind the music. It's, provides a lot more context for a lot of music that you probably don't know or have never heard. And in order to absorb that kind of, music, you have to have some context around it, right? It's one thing to hear, a great song for the first time and it's a hit, as they say, and you get it right away. But it's also, really important to set context for what an artist is trying to communicate. And I think what we're trying to create with Sonos Radio is a platform for artists and collaborators to be able to tell those stories and set the right context for what they're about to hear, both in our artist stations, but as well on our genre stations. Like we have a station called Concert Hall, which is our classical station. And there's tons of information about what orchestra is playing and who's the conductor. And it really helps set context for listening experience that's much different than just hitting shuffle on a classical station. It's really about helping to educate users, giving them some information they might not know about a certain piece of music and how those things relate to each other. And so we think we can do that across different genres and really help to provide that an interesting and new listening experience for folks. And we're experimenting more and more with how to play that out as we go through the new stations and concepts that we create.
Yeah, so what you mentioned behind that classical station, I haven't got to that one yet. I've used Sonos Radio a bit. I haven't heard that particular one. But yeah, being able to educate and bring in more info as people listen seems like a really smart move, especially given how hot podcasts are getting right now. I know it sounds a little bit trite to say that, but I mean, clearly you see the business Spotify is doing and other companies around buying up podcast creative networks, that sort of thing. So there's clearly a demand for something that marries like music with informative content. Did that sort of influence, the basis of Sonos Radio and some of these channels at all?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a million places you can listen to music, right? And ultimately, what we're trying to do is create something different, a little bit more valuable for those that choose to listen to the stuff that we're making. And I think, we to your point, Nate, like what we think of is how do you? It's really all about how do you. I say this so much, it just sounds like I'm saying the same thing over again. But how do you set the right context for what you're about to hear, right? Like music, how do you make sure that the music matters, and how do you actually help the listening audience, understand what or why they're hearing a certain thing, right? Because without that, things can get lost. You might not be introduced to a new artist. You might not resonate with something just the first time you hear it. But if you know why the artist is talking about a thing, or if you understand, where that artist came from, it will kind of open your ears and help you listen. We talk a lot about, on our side about listening with big ears, right? It helps you listen with big ears and be receptive to something new or something different that you might not expect. And, we're not trying to be the everything store for music, right? We're trying to create a really curated and kind of interesting experience for our listeners that really they can't have anywhere else. And so that's, I think, the special sauce that we're trying to bring to the table.
Yeah, that description you just gave reminds me of the notion between like lean back music, which is like the Pandora style stations, which some of the Sonos Radio things are similar to, versus lean forward, where you're in control, you're picking your playlists, your albums, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. It sounds like Sonos Radio kind of bridges those two worlds a bit.
Yeah, I would say it's definitely, it's interesting. We think about that in terms of like, what are the properties and stations we're trying to make for those different use cases? So some stations are designed to be much more challenging. Like you mentioned sound systems. Sonos Sound System is our flagship kind of brand forward station where we do original shows. We work with quite a few collaborators on a series we make called Radio Hour, which is a weekly show, interview format where an artist will walk us through something they're listening to now or what's really interesting to them. That's hosted by Elliot Einhorn, and it's a really fantastic listen. You can listen to all of the archives of those shows on our Mixcloud archive, which I can give the URL for a little bit later. But Sound System is a place where we're really challenging the listener, right? There's lots of different genres all in one station. It's not designed to be put on and listened to for 4 hours at a time, right? Versus a station that we make one of my personal favorites called Cruise Control, which is effectively a soft rock station. It mixes kind of yacht rock with modern soft rock. And, it's like Tame Impala into, Michael McDonald, right? It's kind of an interesting mix that actually is kind of unique. But you can listen to that station for 4 or 5 hours at a time and kind of have a consistent vibe. And so those are very different use cases for what would really just be, a radio station. But some of them are kind of more challenging and inviting and kind of have like a museum type point of view. And others are really meant to be, push play and listen for 4 or 5 hours at a time. And we're trying to figure out like, what is the right balance there? How do we optimize that and think about that as we go forward?
I think right now we could all use 4 or 5 hours of yacht rock just to sort of mellow out.
It's very relaxing.
Sort of,
yeah.
That's awesome. So this launched last April, I believe. Coming up on a year soon. just broadly speaking, how's it going? What's engagement like? How can you talk about how you've expanded in terms of adding new artist stations? But yeah, and what have you learned about what people are looking for in this sort of thing over the last, I guess, 8-9 months?
Yeah, I mean, reception's been fantastic. We're the fastest growing service on our own platform, and we've become the number 4 most listened to service on Sonos so far. So people are responding well. People are using the service. That's incremental, like ultimately to the overall listening on the platform. So we talked a little bit about what we're all experiencing, being on stay-at-home orders and so forth. Listening on Sonos in general is up, 33% plus, year over year, and just growth in home listening is accelerating as you would imagine. But, again, our goal is to get people to listen listen out loud more often in their home. And so that seems to be working. People are enjoying. We've got great feedback. We've got lots of negative feedback in terms of how we want to improve the product experience over time as well. And so really, we're just kind of learning through this process. I think, one of the other interesting things is in November, we launched Sonos Radio HD, which is our first kind of subscription offering. And really that's an, ad-free, skippable Sonos radio stations, all delivered in FLAC format and HD format. But as well, we have many more stations behind that you get when you become an HD subscriber. And so we're really, again, kind of learning and growing around how we think about that. What are the right types of stations people are interested in from us, and how do we continue to evolve that? But ultimately, it's been super exciting to bring a new experience to our owners, and the reception's been quite fantastic so far.
Well, I'm glad you brought up HD because I meant to talk about that as well. So that came about 6 months after the initial Sonos Radio launch, I believe. Like you mentioned, it's an $8 a month add-on to Sonos Radio, which is free and ad-supported. So that gets rid of ads on most, if not all, the stations. And adds
we have some ad-free stations, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So we do have on the free tier, we do have some ad-free stations. For instance, Sound System is an ad-free station, and our artist stations are ad-free there. But for all of our genre stations like Cruise Control, I mentioned, and many others, those are ad supported. And then for Sonos Radio HD, obviously the entire experience is ad-free there.
Okay, great. So like I said, it came pretty quickly on the heels of the initial Sonos Radio launch. I was actually a little surprised, like I said, 6 months in, you decided to go into the extremely competitive paid space. So can you talk at all about how that launch has gone? Have you seen much uptick? And I'm also curious if that was like always part of the roadmap, or was it more about we're going to launch the free product, let it be out there for a bit, see if there's a need for this upgraded product?
Yeah, it's a great question. So obviously we just got started November 12th. So we're like a month and a half into Sonos Radio HD. I mean, we're super happy with the results so far, but I can't really share more than that. I think in terms of how we got started, like as we believe it or not, when we launched in April, we didn't actually have the subscription service fully ironed out at that point, right? So it was really about how do we respond to our audience and kind of what they're asking for. Is this something folks would be willing to pay for, or is that not something that's worth pursuing? So we really took those first 6-8 weeks to listen and kind of learn and kind of make some adjustments along the way, and really just started plugging away at delivering what we think was the right first step for the audience that was asking us for some of these things. So we're kind of in this mode where we're learning to like any service, right, or any service out there, you listen to your consumers and your audience, and you kind of make adjustments as quickly as you can to kind of satisfy what they're asking for.
So at the beginning, you mentioned how part of what led to Sonos Radio is the fact that you see on your platform that standard radio listening, which I believe includes FM and then other like lean back stuff like Pandora Radio, makes up about half the playtime. Is that accurate? Out of everybody on Sonos?
Roughly 50% of listening on Sonos has been traditional radio.
So what does that tell you about what people like to do with their speakers? I found that a little surprising in a world we've got Spotify, Apple Music, and so many other audio sources that Sonos supports. That still standard, radio, terrestrial radio is still this like huge driver.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many reasons for that, right? I mean, like ultimately. I joke a lot. It's like people are lonely and they want to have friends around them, right? And the people they listen to in the morning getting ready, are their friends and it's their community, and they're actually listening to the community that lives around them, whether it's their local radio stations or whatnot. I think what we're finding is what we're trying to deliver is making sure that users and our owners can find the stations that resonate most with them. So Sonos is global, and Sonos Radio is available globally. We see quite different listening patterns in different countries around the world. So you have a place like the Netherlands where overall terrestrial radio listening is super high, and people listen for hours and hours and hours at a time, which is different than the way people listen to in the US or in Australia or Canada. And so kind of seeing those nuances in terms of how people connect with the hosts that they like, and the news shows that they enjoy, and how they interact with talk versus music is a really interesting dynamic to understand why people are listening to radio in that sense.
Great. And you said that people do like to feel like they've got a friend. Obviously, you come to know your local DJs very well, that sort of thing. And for the same perspective, you've got guest hosts and recurring radio segments, stations curated by artists who you can come back every week or every couple of weeks and get updates from them. Can you talk a little bit about how you got these hosts on board, what you're looking for, how these people ended up sort of leading the initial Sonos Radio push?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about that a little bit at the beginning, but for years we have done lots of different and interesting kind of artists or collaborations, whether it's and we would do that with partners as well, and we still continue to do that. For example, when we launched a product a couple of years ago, we did an awesome activation with the Gorillaz and kind of brought an experience to life to help them promote one of their new albums a few years ago. And so really we wanted to kind of be able to create a space where we can bring those types of things to life on our platform, as opposed to only in brand activation experiences and things like that. So and so over the years, we've developed lots of relationships with not only artists, but also with folks that make awesome radio shows and content and so forth too. So you'll see a lot more from us. I mean, we're like you said before, we're just getting started here. Right now, we have one weekly format show called Radio Hour. We just launched a second one with Crack Magazine out of the UK called Unsung, and the concept of that show is really to talk with artists that you may know about music that's heavily influenced them that probably never got their due, hence the name Unsung. And so, last week's episode was with the lead singer of Future Islands, and just really highlighting an artist that he loves, but maybe no one ever has heard of, and really telling the story of that artist. And so it's really just, again, a way to help our audience connect with artists that they might enjoy or love, and really learn the stories and kind of influence of those artists. And we're going to experiment with lots of different shows and types of content to really continue that mission. In terms of how we kind of got folks on board, it's really been, look, we're quite lucky in that we've spent 18 years at this point, building the best products we can make from a speaker and sound perspective, right? So we work with lots of, artists to help tune our speakers. We have a soundboard that, helps us develop products and help get the right sound profile for ARC or for the Sonos 5 or the Sonos Move. And so really, it's about kind of working with those partners to kind of expand the network and kind of bring folks in that really care about sound quality, that want to bring a great sound experience to life. And actually, I have Dolly Parton's book behind me. When we launched Sonos Radio HD, one of the stations that, our marquee station for the launch was called Songteller Radio, which is a station hosted by Dolly Parton. And there's obviously some Dolly Parton music on there, but she plays Beyonce records, and she plays a lot of things on that station and talks about it in the way that you might not expect Dolly Parton to talk about Beyonce, right? And it's really, it's what we're really trying to do is kind of create a safe space for artists to tell a story that they want to tell. It's a radio station format, not just a show, right? So it's not a one-off 1 hour listen. It's about creating something that can be listened to for months and or more at a time, and always be fresh and always be changing. And so and I think it's just a little bit unique, and some artists are attracted to helping us do that.
How often do these stations update, like the Dolly Parton one you just mentioned? How often does she push out sort of new? I know episodes isn't quite the right word, but there's new content from her on a rotating schedule, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything we do everything's hand curated, right? So this is not an algorithm picking every song. This is every station on Sonos Radio is hand curated by our team or a partner or an artist themselves. And ultimately, they're always changing. And so there's new ads and takedowns, on a weekly and it's certainly on a monthly basis, but usually every couple of weeks, we're constantly refreshing and rotating that content. Some artists obviously do it more often than others, but the idea is that these are effectively permanent and always evolving experiences, right? So it's not a playlist on loop over and over. It's an ever evolving and ever growing catalog with more stories over time as well. So yeah, it's a constant process, right? And we're doing that every single day.
Yeah, so to zoom out a little bit from specifically Sonos Radio, has working on this given you any insights, or do you have any thoughts on the sort of world of audio streaming, what's coming up next in terms of trends or how people listen, both from a programming or software side of things, as well as a hardware situation based on you guys obviously have a long history of making hardware. So is there anything you've learned over the last year from this experience that makes you think about how people's listening patterns might be changing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you mentioned kind of obviously the rise of podcasts and how that's kind of really been super dynamic over the past few years. I mean, I think there's a lot happening around this idea of building context around music, right? Ultimately, what is exciting to me to see is that a lot of other folks or a lot of other companies and platforms and services are doing an increasingly better job of this. Traditional radio has done this forever, and they do a really good job at it. But I think the nuance of how do you not have super annoying ads throughout the entire experience all the time? How do you do that in a really considered way? How do you create a platform that it's not only designed to optimize peak, time spent listening from a radio perspective, to really be able to kind of, give people more information and kind of tell more stories about the music itself. Other folks are starting to do this. I mean, some of the stuff that's happening, in the podcasting space is super exciting with Anchor's new tools for adding music to podcasts and things like that are, I think, really, really interesting. And you're going to start to see a lot more experimentation around, putting the curation tools in the hands of the people as opposed to only the gatekeepers. That's a huge trend that I see, happening over the next year or so.
Yeah, when you consider the fact that the internet, one of the best things about it is that you're not limited by radio bands or bandwidth or anything. You can just have as many stations as you want to reach as many different sort of subsets of listeners as you want. You can just keep on going down that road as long as someone's interested enough to curate it. There's probably going to be people who are interested in listening to it too.
Totally. I mean, I think look, in the 2000s or kind of even in the late 90s and early 2000s, we talked about, hey, someday in the future, you're going to have the ability to use any kind of music you want. And then there's going to be a layer of experiences built on top of that. And I finally think that we're at the place where that's starting to happen, right? Whether it's, concerts in Fortnite or, what's happening around kind of bringing music experience to life in different mediums. We're right on the cusp of that starting to happen and become real. In fact, whatever, some companies developing out there in the lab, those experiences are real now, and they're on their way to the mainstream over the next year and a half, I think.
I think you could say that's one of the few good things that have come from, live music not being a thing, unfortunately, over the last better part of a year, is that, artists and technology companies alike are getting really creative about how to bring these experiences into people's homes. And I'm glad to see that myself for sure.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of concerts at my my living room over the past year, and it's I think that space is gonna evolve quite rapidly as well. So it actually is a super exciting time, because I feel like for the last 10 years, music technology and kind of what's happening around music services has been pretty well. You could kind of forecast where it was heading pretty clearly. And I think over the next few years, you're going to start to see a lot more divergence. I guess what I was trying to say is there's been a lot of convergence over the past, 3, 4, 5 years in terms of what a music service or a music experience looks like. And I think you're going to start to see a lot more experimentation and divergence over the next couple. And that's super exciting.
Right. Now all these companies have their catalogs with 70 million songs, whatever set. They got to figure out ways to differentiate from there. And it's going to be, experiences like you're offering with Sonos Radio. It's going to be Spotify merging podcasts and music. It's going to be Apple kind of merging video stuff with their music service, all those sort of things. And but yeah, from here, it's a good point. I don't know where it's going to go. It's going to be really interesting to see.
I think things are a lot more fun when you don't know what's about to happen, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think that is our time here. Again, I want to say thanks very much for coming on and joining us today. And can you mentioned at the top that you're keeping an archive of the sound system interviews. Is that accurate? On Mixcloud, I think you said?
Yeah. So we work very closely with Mixcloud, and all of the radio hours and kind of special shows we make are available on our Mixcloud archive. It's mixcloud.com/Sonos. And you can find us on Instagram at Sonos Radio, where we're telling interesting stories on Instagram as well around the content we're making. So that's where you can find us.
Great. Well, thanks for the update. And do you have any internet platforms that you want to share, or do you prefer to kind of stay off the grid?
I'm kind of off the grid there, so I'll stick to Sonos at this point.
Sounds good. Ryan, thanks again for joining us. It was great to catch up with you. And coming up next, we're going to be talking with Sony about what's next for the future of Sony. So again, thanks, and keep it tuned to Engadget.com for more.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Engadget's live coverage of CES 2021. I'm Senior Editor Devendra Hardawar, and today I'm chatting with Mike Fasulo, President of Sony Electronics. Hi Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Devendra. How are you?
Doing well, and I always love having a chance to chat with you, Mike, at every CES, and this one seems particularly exciting for Sony, even though we're all doing this virtually. You guys had a lot of big announcements, and I think the one that really struck me is the cognitive processor XR that you announced for the new TVs, for the Bravia XR TVs. Can you tell us what is Sony trying to accomplish with a cognitive processor?
Well, we're all about quality. We're all about lifelike. We're all about trying to portray the creator's intent and having the end user, customer, consumer, have a just wonderful experience, a lifelike experience. And the cognitive intelligent processor, which we call XR, does that in spades. I mean, it's the world's first. So it really does make you feel like you're there, like it's lifelike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm wondering, because I know Sony, one thing I've always liked about Sony TVs is you guys pay a lot of attention to image processing and how you actually display an image. Can you tell me, like, how does this differ from the image processing Sony has been doing up until now, right? The cognitive processor seems like it works a little differently, right?
Yeah, much more advanced. So, artificial intelligence, and we've been, our processors have been wonderful for years and decades. And we've got a database of content and database, of information that now with the cognitive intelligent processor, it acts a little bit differently than artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence will take an element or individually multiple elements, contrast, color, et cetera, and piece them together. What the cognitive processor does, the intelligent processor does, is it does it simultaneously, and it's actually doing it not only for video, but audio as well. And the intent is that it's trying to reproduce how your brain works from a point of view of visual experience. So it will determine, based on the content, where you likely are looking and where you likely are listening, and develop. The processor actually brings the content to that exact space, and we do it in zones. We call it zones, but it really is immersive. It is, here's the downside of virtual. I always say seeing and hearing is believing, and in this case, boy, is it believing. Quite immersive on the video side, but the audio side, as I said as well.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I see some, actually in your video background right now, I see some cool Sony products just chilling out. I see an Aibo that's sleeping a little. Does Sony have anything cool that you guys are announcing this year? We're going to talk back about the TVs in a bit, but it's always interesting to see like what Sony delivers at every CES. What else are you guys working on?
Everything we announce is cool. Come on. Well, I took a risk, and for this interview, we announced this product yesterday as well. This is our Wi-Fi enabled speaker, under $100, and it actually works also as a speakerphone. So I'm doing this interview live. I just took it out of the box. There it is. I brought it out of the box, plug and play, and here we are communicating. But it's also a party and a speaker. So we call it extra bass, and you can daisy chain them, link them together, and really enjoy loud, heavy bass, exciting music. And maybe your generation. For my generation, while you're doing that, I picked these up, which are the world's leading noise canceling headphones. So while you're playing crazy music, I'm doing this. Now, in all seriousness, these are our 1000X Mark IV noise canceling headband headphones, which also world leading in noise canceling. And this is the XB23, which is, again, I say Wi-Fi enabled speaker. We are announcing two other personal speakers around 360 reality audio that'll be out in the spring. And if you think about today's environment, you can't go to a concert, right? So 360 Reality Audio kind of lets you bring the concert to you.
Yeah, and we've covered Sony's work on 360 Reality Audio over the past few years. Can you explain what that is and how that's different from the way people normally listen to music with maybe a set of stereo speakers?
Sure. So it's object based. So spherical space to think of. The artist has the ability in the studio to actually place the instruments and the vocals where they prefer in a kind of live environment. Right, so you just put on your Sony headphones or other brands' headphones, hopefully Sony headphones, and you'll get the sound as if you were sitting in a room with 13 speakers around you, and it gives the artist a lot of creative intent. So they can mix and move sound the way they prefer, and then you can hear it that way. Just with a pair of headphones or a speaker. You don't need any special devices to do that. See how happy she is?
But
in today's world, you think about remote, for the artists, it's a pretty remarkable technology. And we came up with a software that makes it actually easier for the recording studios to use it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Are we going to see more from 360 Reality Audio this year? I think you guys had just announced some new tracks. The speakers are coming out, and those are something I've seen in prototype for a while. I actually own an Amazon Echo Studio, which has 360 Reality Audio support. So I really enjoy that as a speaker. What can people expect this year? Because it seems like we've been waiting for 360 Reality Audio to really launch in a big way.
Sure. So, we're committed as ever to audio. And, whenever you and I talk, I always talk about customer choice, right? So whatever makes you happy and enjoyable is what we want to deliver. In this case, it's really bringing you as close to that live event as possible. So we've got over 4,000 tracks. We're working with, you mentioned Amazon, obviously. We're working with Amazon, Tidal, Deezer, Nugs. We've got this new software for the creators so that it's easier for them to drop a track in 360 Reality Audio. We're coming out with the 2 speakers in the spring. Our existing line of headphones is compatible. We're building it out more and more. And I think, again, relative to everything at home, it's quite timely. And that's for the kind of live concert music fanatic really wants to be in the center of the action application. We talked about the processor on the Bravia XR, but that also will upscale to 3D surround sound audio regardless of source. Right? So audio, we believe, is critical to the experience, video and audio together.
Gotcha. And speaking of audio too, it does seem like the competition for Sony is kind of heating up. We finally saw Apple produce their own high-end, noise canceling headphones that are even more expensive than the 1000 XM4s. How is Sony thinking about the higher end too? Is there more you're planning to deliver on the headphone front? Because we're seeing these even more, I don't know if they're necessarily more capable, but certainly more expensive and more premium options coming around too.
Well, we have studio headphones as well. We go, and you and I have had this conversation. We've taken the walls down between consumer, professional, and everything in between. So it's a matter of taste and expectation. But our studio monitor headphones are, superb, high quality, premium, more professional oriented than consumer oriented, but no reason why consumers can't buy them either. I mean, I have a pair here in my home office. But our 1000X Mark IV are just remarkable headphones. We lead in noise canceling. They're very comfortable. If you look at any of the reviews, you don't get ear fatigue. You can wear them for hours, and the sound quality is bar none, just superb. And you said it, not me. They're reasonably priced.
Gotcha.
Lightweight.
Gotcha. Well, thank you. Yeah. let's move back to TVs, because I do feel like there's a big trend I'm seeing this year too. You guys are talking a lot about 8K for bigger screens, and it seems like 8K is becoming more of a reality for the industry this year. You know, we saw a couple other manufacturers announce a lot of news around that. TCL has a whole line coming out that's going to be 8K. How are you guys approaching that, and what's the value of 8K for consumers when the content isn't quite there yet?
Just as we've said in the past, we believe 8K, because of its capability of upconverting with larger screen, actually makes a difference. So, you know, we believe 75-inch and above, you can see a visual difference with 4K upscale if you have an 8K television. But, you know, we have a large broadcast and media business and production business, as well as own studios. So we know workflow, and 8K is not the primary workflow for content creation. 4K is still building and doing wonderful, right? So here we are, just a few years after the launch of 4K, which I personally think is phenomenal technology, and introducing 8K. But our perspective, for bigger screen direct view, 8K really can make a difference. In smaller screens, we kind of question it.
Yeah, most definitely. I guess, we're kind of actually wrapping for time soon, because we have a full schedule of stuff to talk about. But I'm wondering broadly, Mike, right now during the pandemic, a lot of people are stuck at home. Our TVs, I think more than ever, are windows into the world, and, you know, ways to see other people and, you know, look outside of our walls and everything. How is Sony thinking about that? As it's, you know, positioning all of its entertainment properties right now? You guys are talking about a new streaming service for high quality films, but also when you're thinking about TVs, how is Sony thinking about, you know, its role in a way to help make life easier for people while they're trapped at home?
Yeah, we want to make them as flexible as possible, and, you know, again, give the consumer choice. We talked about Bravia XR, but we also have Bravia Core, which you were alluding to. With Sony Pictures Entertainment, not only will you have access to stream classics, but also some of the top tentpole films as they come out will be made available to folks that buy our Bravia televisions. Additionally, IMAX enhanced. So, you know, working with IMAX on enhanced content, as well as our Netflix calibration mode, right? So we really do believe not only in high quality, but in choice and access. Through our Bravia Core offering, there's a term we use, Pure Stream. And Pure Stream allows you to deliver to your television, your Bravia television with XR, up to 80 megabits per second streaming, right? Which is UHD Blu-ray quality. You know, obviously you have to have a pipe to get it into your home. But you don't have to add any additional devices. It's already built into the system, and the delivery mechanism can bring it to you in really high quality. Obviously, we're on the Google platform, or not obviously, we are on the Google platform. We're introducing Google TV. We work with Alexa, Amazon Alexa, on voice assistants through our TVs, AirPlay 2, HomeKit. So really, whatever technology that you're most comfortable with, we've built innovative televisions and audio devices to be able to handle your choice. It's really exciting.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing like what you guys are cooking for the rest of the year, Mike, and I hope we get to chat in person soon. Stay tuned to Engadget.com. We've got more news coming. We've got a roundtable with some of our editors talking about what's next and what we really have enjoyed so far at CES. Thanks for joining us, folks, and thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This is Engadget's continuing live coverage of CES 2021, the online-only edition, the digital edition, whatever you want to call it. That's what we're doing. Special thanks to Devendra Hardawar and Sony America President Mike Vasula. They just had a great chat. But we're now getting to the point in the day where we like to take a look back at the announcements that have happened so far and just kind of give you a sense of where we are in the show right now. And to do that with me today, we basically brought out the A-team. We've got Engadget Editor-in-Chief Dana Wallman, Managing Editor Terrence O'Brien, and from the West Coast, Senior Editor Carissa Bell. Guys, I want to get into the news with you in just a sec, but it's been a while since we've all been together in the same place like this. How are your shows going?
I'm shocked at how sort of true to life this feels like for CES. I know we're not living out of hotel rooms in Vegas, and I know we're not walking around a convention center, and we're not peeing in porta potties every day, but guys, I'm tired. I know you're tired. I only just had my first food of the day at 3:45 p.m. That feels kind of like a real CES to me.
Yeah, it's just as exhausting as normal, but I'm lacking the camaraderie. I miss your company, V. And you too, Dana.
Well, Terrence,
we haven't done CES together before, but I miss your company as well.
Yeah, this is my first one with Engadget, so I feel like I'm definitely missing out on the full experience.
You guys simply do not understand how badly I wish I could walk out of a trailer right now and walk like the half a mile to the pepper mill and just eat an entire country fried steak by myself. But that will unfortunately have to wait until CES goes physical again at some point. We do now, though, want to go into some of the day's announcements. And if yesterday was the day we really saw TVs and smart home technology really kind of take the stage, today kind of feels like that moment for chips and laptops. We've had quite a few big announcements today, maybe the biggest. NVIDIA announcing that its new RTX series high-end mobile GPUs now going into laptops that'll be available starting this month. A few companies have already confirmed that they're working on RTX-grade laptops, among them Razer, Alienware by Dell, and Acer. As far as prices are concerned, what we know so far is NVIDIA has said that at the base level, if you're looking at a laptop with the RTX 3060, the sort of entry-level sort of ray tracing friendly GPU for laptops, you can expect to see prices start at about $1,000. But just so far in the announcements we've seen from these companies, we're seeing the floor hovering closer to about $1,500, which is maybe a bit more than people were willing to spend. But look at it this way. If you are one of those people, and I assume because you're watching this, you might be, you probably are well aware of how difficult it's been to get an RTX 3060, 3070, 3080 for a desktop build. So the idea of being able to buy a laptop, which some of you are probably going to do anyway with this sort of high-level graphics performance, that seems really, really powerful. I want to turn it over to you guys, and especially Terrence and Dana. What's your sense of how important these are? And more importantly, do you want this stuff? Does this appeal to you at all?
I'm not going to speak for Dana, obviously, but I'm not a big gamer. I'm always excited to see, new, faster, more powerful hardware in things. Just because I'm a guy who likes flashy, high-powered things. I have a reputation for buying laptops that are way more powerful than I absolutely need for my daily work. But at the same time, this is I don't play first person shooters. I'm not like a big PC gamer guy. So this is the sort of thing that I'm like, this isn't the stuff that I get excited about.
Got it. And Dana, where are you at with these guys?
So I'm not a gamer per se. My next laptop isn't going to be a gaming laptop, but I thought it was interesting, just as our team yesterday was talking about possible Best of CES award finalists. In this category, even just centering on chips, it did seem like collectively the companies were in different ways giving consumers everything they could possibly want. It seems like NVIDIA is taking the angle of getting its most powerful chips into a mobile form factor. But from Intel, we really saw an emphasis on thinner and lighter devices. So I think it's less that I am impressed with NVIDIA specifically, and more just impressed with the variety and the degree of choice that consumers are going to have from this point forward.
Yeah, and you raised a really great point about the differences in approach. As you point out, Intel is going with a pretty pronounced focus on getting more powerful new processors into thin and light laptops. We're seeing a lot of new laptops this year with the 11th gen Core i7 series chipsets, which are pretty powerful for the sort of size and price and performance envelope. But we'll get to another laptop featuring that chipset in just a sec. Carissa, are you a gamer? Does this do anything for you?
I'm not much of a PC gamer. I do think, you kind of alluded to some of the previous GPUs from NVIDIA have been very in demand, hard to get. So I think what I'm just sort of curious to see is like if they're going, what the supply and demand will be like for these. I feel like they will be probably pretty popular. What we've seen in the past is any indication.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, especially when you consider the fact that, again, going back to sort of the desktop scenario, if you were, again, looking for the sort of desktop equivalents of these chips, the RTX 3060, 3070, 3080, for the longest time, like if you wanted to get your hands on this chip and didn't want to pay a scalper like 200% minimum increase over the actual cost of these GPUs, you basically had to go out and buy like a pre-built system with these GPUs inside. And for some people, that's perfectly not a problem, right? Not everyone wants to sit down and go on PC Part Picker and like figure out exactly what their next rig is going to be. If they want just the best power possible for their budgets, yeah, go buy an HP or a Dell or something with the graphics card you're looking for, and you're more or less fine. I feel like that's basically what we're looking at with these guys too. Obviously, there's a big focus on gaming with these chipsets, so it's no surprise to see companies like Razer and Alienware really kind of embrace these chipsets, these technologies. I suspect they're probably, by dint of deals they've probably made with NVIDIA and their various manufacturer partners, they've probably got pretty steady supply. So for now, at least, if you're looking for really high-powered graphical performance and you don't mind sort of living with the compromises that come with getting that in a mobile device, yeah, maybe one of these new laptops might be the way to go. Speaking of laptops, I want to turn our attention really quickly to another weirdo, the Lenovo. Let me make sure I get this name right because it's a mouthful. The Lenovo ThinkBook Plus Gen 2i, which is far and away the least elegant thing I've had to say all day. But here's the cool thing about it. If you haven't seen our story, I definitely recommend you check it out. It's basically a business laptop, so not normally the kind of thing we get particularly fussed over here at Engadget. But it does have, as I mentioned, the Intel 11th Gen Core i7 chipset, comes with 16 gigs of RAM if you want it. But on the back of that screen, you do get an e-ink display, and actually a much bigger one than the one we saw in the ThinkBook Plus. The thrust of the argument here is that if you're a working professional, maybe you're too busy to like open up your laptop, you're on the phone, like you're handling some deals or whatever. You want to be able to launch productivity apps like the Office Suite or your note-taking app from the back of your computer without having to open your computer. It's a really weird concept, so I want to hear you guys weigh in. Would you ever use a dual-screen laptop with a screen like this on its back?
So V, I don't know if you're one of the people who saw this in person ahead of the show, but just how do you reconcile this being a business laptop with security implications? It's hard enough protecting the information that's on a screen facing you, and companies that make business laptops have really tackled that with different kinds of screen dimming and protecting devices. What do you do about information on a business laptop that is being broadcast and literally shared with the world in that form factor with just the screen facing out like that? How are they reconciling that?
Dana, I'm so glad you asked that question. So in complete, for the sake of full disclosure, I have not seen this particular version of the laptop. Last year, though, I did see the original ThinkBook Plus, which was same idea, just with slightly worse software for that external screen. But if the question is, how can Lenovo sort of justify making this a business machine? You can't. Like, you don't. It's not. I don't like. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, I understand the ability to like do stuff without having to wait for your laptop to sort of wake up properly. But yeah, I actually hadn't thought about the privacy concerns. But and I'm sure there are tools with which one can control sort of what appears on the back of that e-ink display and when. But on the whole, yeah, even if I was in the trailer with you guys, like, I don't want you guys to see anything I'm doing. So the idea of using an e-ink screen on the back of my laptop with any kind of insight into my current workflow sounds like a nightmare.
No, I have to say that I've
actually thought
I'm
about.
somebody who
Go ahead, Carissa.
I was gonna say, I'm somebody where I've been generally excited to see dual screen devices, foldables, all these kind of more these different form factors that we've been seeing the last couple of years. But making a dual screen with one of them e-ink, I really just kind of don't understand what the practical use case for that is. Is it a battery consideration, or is there some other purpose that the e-ink is supposed to serve?
So as I understand it, yeah, battery is part of the equation here. So as I mentioned, you can sort of run certain apps from the outside of the laptop when it's closed on that e-ink display. And I think you're rated for between 17 and 20 hours of pretty continued use if you're just using that e-ink display, if for whatever reason your workflow, your setup kind of allows for that. That's obviously not going to be the case for everyone, but if you can sort of swing that, yeah, you're looking at considerably better battery life. But I want to throw it over to Terrence. Where are you on this laptop?
Similar to you, I hadn't actually thought about the privacy implications of that, which also confuses me, Dana. So thank you for bringing that to our attention. I'm with everybody else here in that I just don't quite understand it as a business machine. I thought last year's model, the ThinkBook Plus, was theoretically a consumer-oriented device. The whole pitch was around it being basically when you're not actively using it, can kind of be like an Echo Show, right? That was the whole idea.
Yeah, that was
and I guess
for sure.
That kind of makes sense, like for a home machine. But the use case, the selling point doesn't seem quite as clear to me as a business machine.
It's interesting you bring that up, because if you look at sort of Lenovo's trajectory with this laptop from last year to this year, yeah, they kind of stripped out a lot of the fun stuff. Like Alexa, I mean, I've not used this thing, but Alexa is pretty clearly visible in many of the images Lenovo has shared. So Alexa is there to some extent. One thing I do want to point out, last year's model, I believe, had the Kindle app preloaded, and you could read Kindle books on the back of your laptop if you wanted to. And I believe that's gone. There is no mention of that anywhere. So you're right. It does seem like the consumer benefits that we did see last year have sort of been eroded away. And whether or not that works out to Lenovo's benefit remains to be seen, but I think it's a loss. I think it's a little more practical and a little less weird than it used to be, and who wants that stuff? We could go on about computers all day, but I do want to turn our attention really quickly over to the many automotive announcements that are made at CES. If you've been watching the show for the last few years, you'll have seen car makers and sort of technology companies that feed into car makers really taking up a much larger proportion of what happens at the show. And that's definitely still true this year. A couple of things I want to just run through very quickly. GM has announced a new business unit called BrightDrop, which is doing electric vehicles, but specifically for deliveries and inventory management. So if you're used to seeing your UPS or your FedEx truck, a diesel truck pull up to your house or apartment building with a bunch of boxes for you, as I'm sure all of us are since we review so many things, that could eventually be replaced by a decently ranged electric vehicle. The one GM is looking at here has a carrying capacity of about 2,200 pounds, and I believe can hold up to about 600 square inches of cargo. There's a lot of room in there. I think I've got that figure wrong, but point is, sort of building up new technologies to complete that last mile, right, from a delivery facility to your home, could be really beneficial in the long term from an environmental perspective, and I'd love to see more of that. We've also got some news on GM's new electric vehicles, the Bolt EV and the Bolt EUV, the electric utility vehicle, which is, I guess, just a crossover, but with an electric motor. One of the big things about the Bolt EUV is that it has GM's Super Cruise sort of autonomous driving system. It's not fully autonomous. You still have to sort of pay attention, but it does kind of help keep you in lanes, and more importantly, requires that the driver be paying attention to what's going on to make sure that the sort of automated systems work correctly. We've now gotten to the point where automated driving systems are fairly common, and I'm just curious, going around the table, has anyone experienced one? And if so, what were your experiences like?
Shall I start this off?
Please.
I have not been in an autonomous driving car. I wish I would have been. The best I've got is my current car has like lane assist. But I will tell you, I will be among the first to like line up and buy a like reasonably priced consumer facing self-driving car. Like I'm 100% on board for that. And I very much want one very, very badly. I think, I don't know, Carissa, do you drive?
I do. I don't have a car, but I drive occasionally.
Okay. And I know, Dana, you do not have a car. Do you have a license?
I don't. I have a license. I haven't driven since I took my driving exam, but that's a story for another day. But I remember, I forget what CES it was. I don't remember if it was last year or 3 years ago, but did any of you guys take any of the avail yourselves of the self-driving lift rides that were being piloted in Vegas at the time? Because I do think I've been in a self-driving car, and I think that was when and where it happened.
I don't think
they were kind of
have.
hard to get a hold of.
That's very true.
Yeah, I remember we spent.
Go ahead, Carissa.
I remember we spent quite a bit of time trying to get one, and a few of my colleagues at the time were able to nail one down, and but I think they were sort of in demand, if I remember.
And that really does kind of feel like the crux of the autonomous driving situation right now, right? It's being very widely talked about. People have already formed opinions about them, but I feel like it's fair to say that the vast majority of people have still not experienced what it's like to be in one of these things. And until that starts to change, until the momentum starts to shift in the favor of people experiencing self-driving vehicles, yeah, I think it's going to be difficult for a lot of people to sort of wrap their heads around sort of the real benefits, at least as far as safety is concerned, because Terrence, I love you, man. Like, please don't get in the self-driving car. Like, you'd probably be fine, but I do not want to chance that.
I mean, here's what I'll say is me in a self-driving car is probably safer than me behind the wheel of a car.
Oh, actually, that is true. You once told me a really scary story about you at a hot air balloon festival in New Jersey that just went badly for everybody.
Yeah. For those who don't know me personally, I have a little, what we might call a rage issue, and sometimes that carries over to the road. So if I can take me out of the equation when it comes to driving, I very much want to do it. And joking aside, I do find driving very stressful. It is something that I don't enjoy. I do it because I have to do it. And so, again, honestly, removing me from that equation is a thing that I very much look forward to. It's the kind of thing that gives me anxiety. So, like, if I can just let a computer drive for me and I don't have to worry about it, then I'm 100% on board.
Man, that is 100%. Oh, sorry. Please.
I think we're a weird sample population because we are each an urban center. So I would not trust a self-driving car with New York City drivers. I don't know how the drivers are in San Francisco, specifically Carissa, but I feel like California has been famed at one point or another for its collective road rage. But I would trust a self-driving car in, I don't know, some suburb somewhere. I would trust it to take me to, where is my subconscious going to take me? To a Friendly's off the highway, right? Like, I think a self-driving car can do that. It can drive probably on highways. I would trust it more on a highway than I would on a city street. I can trust it around a parking lot. I just don't think the places where you and I are as well cut out for it. But I also think that the places where you and I are have so many better options in terms of public transit.
You mentioned that.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying because a lot of the companies that are working on self-driving cars and autonomous vehicles have a lot of their test vehicles in and around San Francisco. So it's very common to see, these cars driving around the city. And I think, it's funny because they're often, I think, a frustration for regular drivers because they're not really good at kind of like following those sort of unspoken norms that like a lot of city drivers do, like moving around double parked cars and just, these little things that people who drive in cities get very used to doing. And autonomous vehicles aren't very good at that. Self-driving cars aren't very good at that right now. So I think that's something that actually a lot of people in San Francisco have experienced and been frustrated with.
having experience driving in San Francisco and just sort of seeing other people driving in San Francisco, please put everyone in a self-driving car. Everyone's bad at it. I do not like the way they handle things. I'm from New Jersey. We're very effective drivers despite what our reputation is, and I stand by that. Oh, come on, man. Anyway, we've got about 10 minutes before we kick it off to the next conversation. But I do want to take a little time to walk through some of our sort of best of CES choices. If you're not aware, Engadget is hosting for I don't even know how many times now the official Best of CES Awards, and we've just published the full list of our finalists on Engadget.com. So if you want to see what we liked, please go check it out. We're also taking solicitations for People's Choice Awards. So if there's a bit of technology that you are very passionate about, you find it very interesting, that isn't super well represented in our list, we want to know about it, you can find all the details on Engadget.com. But guys, we've got a pretty interesting list of things on our nominees here, and I got to start with the Vanguard Industries emotional support gerbil. It's called the Mothman, but I think we've decided it's a gerbil with AI feelings. What do we do with this? Dana is just tremendously enjoying herself right now.
Well, I think it's adorable.
Why a gerbil? Are we ever going to know why a gerbil?
I feel like it's roughly gerbil sized. No? Maybe?
No, that's way bigger than a gerbil. That's more like a chinchilla. Or maybe a guinea pig.
How did you guys both go to chinchilla at the same time? That's wild. So that raises an interesting point. Terrence and Carissa, I believe you're the only two people on this call who have animals. Is that correct?
I do. I have many animals.
Okay, so this is an AI powered chinchilla that allegedly has what they would refer to in very loose terms as feelings. So it can sort of react to moods. It can sort of reacts in different ways, and it shudders and stuff. Would you ever consider getting something like this to supplement your current pet owning life?
I don't think.
Go ahead, Carissa. Sorry.
I don't think anything is. If you have an actual real life pet, I don't think one of these can really maybe beat that experience. I think most pet owners would probably agree.
Yeah, but look at this.
But that's the thing is, like, a lot of people can't have pets, or there's a lot of barriers for a lot of folks, a lot of kids who would love pets, and I think if you have something that kind of approximates that experience and you can kind of get that emotional feedback, probably for children, maybe it would help you, learn empathy or, some of these other things benefits that a lot of like pet owners might get. And if it makes, I see it as more of like opening up an experience that might not be available to everyone.
Terrence, thoughts as a pet man?
I was going to say, no, just building off that real quick, I think that opening up the experience thing to people who might not be able to have it is the important part of it. This is a $400 robot. It is very cute, but, I think to think of it like a pet, like you would your cat, is the wrong way to go about it. It is, they refer to it as an emotional support pet. It's for therapy. I have downstairs a Purble right now, and that is this small like robot toy pet for kids, and the whole idea is that it also tries to express emotion. It's not AI powered. It doesn't like really react that well, but if you turn it upside down, it has a small motor in it, and it beats like its heart is racing, and it gets upset, and you have to pet it and calm it and soothe it down. And for children who maybe are somewhere on the autism spectrum or something, where learning that empathy is very important, this provides a predictable way to get exposed to that. Because you can't just hand a kid a dog or a cat and know immediately how that animal is going to respond to them. So for certain situations, this is a much more appropriate way to kind of learn about that level of interaction and caring.
Terrence O'Brien, as usual, the voice of reason around these parts. I want to turn our attention quickly to, the Vanguard Industries Mouflin, the emotional support gerbil, as we have taken to calling it around Engadget. That's a finalist for the best robot/drone category. Moving on to a finalist for best digital health/fitness is the Omron connected blood pressure monitor. And this, I had no sort of part in picking this particular product, but it does sort of ring true for me because my mom was a nurse for 30 years. And even now, when I get on Zoom with her and my dad, there's always like a blood pressure cuff in the background somewhere. She's either just taken my dad's blood pressure or is about to. So having something like this, which basically handles the blood pressure data collection and then also sort of sends that data to healthcare professionals, seems like something my family could personally benefit. And I'd love to hear if any of you guys sort of fall in the same camp.
I mean, I just want to say for our listeners and our viewers that every year the digital health and fitness category is one of the toughest for us to pick. I think it's precisely because we're trying to be level-headed and not over-credulous. And so you do have a lot of companies making lofty claims, which I think even the best reporters would need to be skeptical of and would have trouble verifying. So there's a lot of claims out there that we didn't even want to elevate in this category. I think we were excited about this Omron device, both in terms of concept, but it is a company that has appeared at CES before, that has made our best of list before. It is a company that feels like more of a known entity in a space where there is a lot of vaporware and just a lot of smoke and a lot of promises not necessarily kept.
Yeah, that's a great point. We really do have to tread care. I mean, obviously, we tread carefully with all of our choices for the best of CES. We do take this responsibility very seriously. But with health, maybe more than any other, right? Like there comes the need for sort of due diligence and for groundwork that I personally happen to think we're very good at, and I feel is reflected well in the fact that, as you point out, Omron, very well-known company. They have a long legacy in sort of health technology, and they've proven themselves, I think, fair to say, over the years to be a fairly reliable source of new devices that could potentially help people in ways different from what they were expecting. I do want to get a little selfish and now turn to the best of mobile category, which is one of mine. Two things really quickly spring to mind. The LG Rollable, which we did see for the briefest of glimpses yesterday. And I know it might seem a little strange to sort of look at something like this, which again sort of appeared in the intro and outro of the LG press conference for like 10 seconds tops. To think of that as a potential finalist for Best of CES might seem a little hasty, but we have since confirmed, among other things, it will be called the Rollable, and we have confirmed that it is coming this year. LG has confirmed that. So this is not vaporware. This is not a product that sort of gets flashed in a press conference and then just disappears into the mist for another few years. This is a real product. It's coming this year, and I think the potential that the Rollable concept has compared to a foldable, right? Because you don't have to worry about the crease. You do get a full-size smartphone screen. If you're familiar with the Galaxy Z Fold 2, you'll know that it has like a very tall, very narrow external display, and you open it up and get sort of the inside screen with the crease, which is, again, not really an issue. With something like a Rollable, you get that big outside screen. That's just your phone, but it becomes a small tablet when you want to. And really quickly, we've got a few minutes left. Just quick around the table, starting with you, Dana. Would you consider using a Rollable as your daily device?
No, but I'm also I haven't been sold on foldables yet either. I mean, I would just say, not to keep throwing questions back to you, but remember when you reviewed the first foldables, there were all these problems with the creases, like where the crease was on the device, and also like, did the crease as a design function, engineering function, introduce vulnerabilities in terms of like the ability for dirt and debris to get in? I guess my question for you is like, if I'm going to pick a weird device, is the Rollable less likely to break?
That's a question I don't think anyone is particularly well equipped to answer right now, but you do raise a great point. I mean, just by dint of having motors and sort of more moving parts inside of a phone as opposed to just a hinge that sort of moves in fairly predictable ways, yeah, you're adding complexity to a system that obviously adds potential for failure. I will say, though, that, I mean, we have not sort of landed anywhere. We don't know if this is going to win. That remains to be seen. But ultimately, I think LG's sort of experience in rollables, especially with respect to its TVs, maybe kind of give it a leg up compared to companies like TCL and Oppo, who are also working on similar concepts. Really quickly, we're just about out of time. I want to thank everyone for joining. It's been a blast. It's just nice to see you guys again. I really appreciate it. Coming up next, we have Sherlyn Lowe. She's got a panel on home fitness tech to keep us healthy in 2021. That's with Jim Barr, the CEO of Nautilus, and Chris Stadler, the Chief Marketing Officer at Tonal. And as mentioned, we are running the official Best of CES Awards. To learn more about our Best of CES finalists, be sure to check out Engadget.com. And to just a quick plea to anyone out there watching, please join us tomorrow for our actual official Best of CES 2021 Awards. That begins at 4:30 Eastern, 1:30 Pacific. That'll be hosted by myself and reviews editor Sherlyn Lowe. It's going to be a good time. Sherlyn and I just sort of bounce off each other, and we're going to talk about a lot of cool products and give out some cool awards. I wish I had the trophy with me, actually. It's upstairs, but it does look... All right, we're now going to turn it over to Sherlyn Lowe. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.
Welcome back, everyone, to Engadget's 2021 CES virtual stage. I'm reviews editor Sherlyn Lowe, and if you've been watching all day, wow, thank you so much. This has been a long day, and this is day 2 of CES. This is the last panel of the day, and I am here to talk about home fitness tech in 2021 with two really great guests. I'm excited to welcome, first, we have Jim Barr, CEO of Nautilus. Hello, Jim.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. And also we have Chris Stedler, the CMO, Chief Marketing Officer of Tono. Hi, Chris, welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much.
Of course. It's great to see you guys. Now, I just want to kind of give our viewer a little bit of background. Obviously, 2020, we were all stuck at home and home fitness tech just exploded in popularity. I could name a lot of stats, but just today alone, I received news in my inbox that Jay-Z and Pitbull invested in a company that would be making home climbing machines. I just think that that's a sign of how much interest there is in this space. Not to mention there are celebrity workout apps. Chris Hemsworth has one called Center. Apple launched Fitness Plus. There's so much interest in home fitness, and I'm sure you as a viewer at home are interested too to find out how you can build out a home gym regardless of the type of space that you have. And who better, right, than Nautilus and Tono to tell us more about it. So let's start with you, Jim, because I want to understand. Jim, I know Nautilus has been around for so long. Both Lexus products have been on the market forever. What has the last year been like for you? Have you seen adoption of your products change at all?
Oh, absolutely. As you mentioned, we've been around for 40 years. We've been focused on, I guess you'd call it more traditional, just making the equipment. Although we had started a transformation towards connected fitness. And of course, what happened even before the pandemic is we were betting more on connected fitness because it's such a great way to connect people, to monitor how they're making progress, to entertain them, to do all sorts of things that the traditional equipment doesn't do. So we're already headed in that direction. And then obviously what happened over this period of time is, I'll call it forced trial. People stuck at home, not able to go to the gym, rediscovering the convenience of working out at home, or discovering for the first time if they were 100% gym goers. So that's been part of it. And then connected fitness, when you look to replace many of the things that you had in your gym experience, connected fitness can do that, whether it's coaching, whether it's trainer-led videos, whether it's being entertained while being trained, all of those types of things. I think people were forced to try that maybe earlier than they would, and they really liked it. And now, going forward, I think they'll balance working out at home and working out in the gym differently if they're not just staying at home. As many as 25% of people are telling us still that they're never going back to the gym, and then the rest that they'll balance it in a new normal between the gym and at home. But of course, because you're not commuting anymore, at home is a bigger part of it.
I fully agree. I mean, I made the bad decision, I think, late 2019 to get rid of the free weights that I had at home. I only had two 5-pounders at home, so that's not that much and not the most sophisticated system. But got rid of them, and then 2020 happened, and I was like, well, I really could use some weights right now. Can you tell me a little bit more about both Lexus products and what sort of, and you said the connected products especially, let's focus on that for our viewers. What are some of these devices available for the home user if they're looking to start with a basic kit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you did mention the dumbbells, which have been like as important as toilet paper in the pandemic. And our select techs that dial up in weight from 5 all the way to 52 pounds. They also help consumers with a space problem that they had. Normally you start buying home equipment when you've got a new room or someone went to college. You have some change in your life as a trigger event. These days, it's you're working out, you're raising your kids, you're transacting business all at home, and so space is a big constraint. So on the strength side, it's been what you're showing there. Both our dumbbells and our barbells are what you're showing there. That's a new product that also dials up and saves space. In terms of cardio, though, we introduced the new VeloCore bike. So bikes have continued to be hot. I think we thank Peloton for that at the beginning, but then we've glommed onto that as well. And so we've introduced the first unstationary bike where you've got, there you're looking at it there, where you can lean back and forth. That's innovative. All our new products, whether they're bikes, they're treads, or any of our Max Trainer, they all have screens and run our Journey connected fitness platform, which allows you to do all the great things related to connected fitness. And we've seen the entire portfolio be hot for the entire time.
This is the stuff that I think most people are familiar with. These are the types of gear you would go to a gym and expect to see. But then there's something a little bit more, I think, new and maybe fresh. And not that Tonal hasn't been around for a while. I know Tonal, you have been around, but relatively newer to the scene. Chris, do you want to kind of walk us through what the concept behind Tonal is?
Absolutely. We've been in development for over 5 years. We've been on the market for a year and a half, so fairly new. And we are the world's smartest home gym. And basically, the new technology that is the big unlock is revolutionary digital weights. And that, combined with personalized expert coaching, helps you get stronger faster. And our business is on fire. We've grown 800% in 2020. The pandemic certainly helped, but we believe that ignited a lot of interest that was already there. So people certainly experienced the benefits of convenience of not having to go to the gym, but we've really doubled down on intelligence. And so we create a very, very personalized workout that's tailor-made for you that you can't get anywhere else. We have a 90% market share in connected strength and are really first mover advantage and are the leader in the category.
Right. So Tonal is something I've been meaning to try, and I've taken a demo before earlier when we were going outside. And one of the reasons I didn't make my own move to buy something like Tonal or even Nearer, which is another sort of somewhat similar product, but not exactly the same. These sorts of products are something that I personally keep from buying because I live in a small apartment, right? And there's a lot of city dwellers like me that may be intimidated by the idea of installation or just don't have the room for, something that looks a little bulkier like that compared to just free weights. So Chris, what are you thinking in terms of Tonal? Is there anything you would say to people who are thinking, I don't have the space or the installation rights for this. My landlord would be too upset if I tried to install this.
Well, you hit on precisely two of the points that we believe that Tonal addresses, especially for folks with small spaces like apartments. First of all, most traditional weightlifting equipment is big and bulky. It gets relegated to the garage or the basement where it's not used and collects dust. We've been able to compact a bunch of basically every exercise and piece of workout equipment in the gym into something that's very elegant, very strong design that fits seamlessly into your home. So you hang it on a wall. It takes up no more space than a flat screen TV and gives you all the benefits of traditional equipment.
Cool. So, like you said, Jim, too, connected weights are a thing. And I think, Chris, you also mentioned that part of your product, the important thing is that you have these personalized workouts. And I've noted over the last year, too, not that they haven't been around before, but this idea of workout, like the Netflix of workout, right? Wondersize is one of the companies that is unveiling a new feature here at CES 2021 where they are able to not only give you guides on what they want you to do, but also start to notice whether your form is good, right? For example, Samsung in its health app for its TVs also unveiled a new smart trainer feature. I've spoken with a few people in the industry, and it feels like some feature like this has either existed in some form. I understand Bowflex does some rep counting with some of your devices, and then form analysis and form assessment has also sort of existed. But how close do you think we are to a state in the industry where our fitness devices can tell we're working out right? Let's start with you, Jim. What do you think?
Sure. I don't think we're that far off. I think personalization is the right thing. And both of us talking about it is, there's so much content out there. I think even your cable company is making fitness videos these days. So there's a lot of commodity out there. So curation is super important. So start with that in the trainer-led videos, finding the ones that are right for you, finding the instructors that are right for you. That's what we do in our Journey app is a lot of in our Journey fitness platform is to really curate that. And we also have an adaptive workout, meaning it's hyper-personalized. No one else in the world, you're given, after you've done a 5-minute fitness assessment, you're given a workout that no one else in the world has. It's unique to you. And then as you make progress, it adjusts so that every time you get on one of our machines, you get something that's just for you. And then the coaching that goes along with that is just for you as well. So we're all around especially in the cardio area, around that personalized experience. And we're looking to bring it even more into strength. Tonal's done a great job. We like to believe we've got a legacy in strength. When you think of the brand Bowflex in particular, you think of strength training. We've had home gyms for a while. We love new competitors that push us and push our technology there, and we give a lot of kudos to what those guys have done. But we're also bringing that to our strength portfolio as well.
I appreciate that you positively recognize your competitors in the space. Chris, what do you think about the personalized and form assessment part of it? How far off do you think we are?
Great question. I appreciate the kudos. Likewise, ours is a bit different. We have 17 points of measurement within Tonal, and all of those combined to give you great form feedback. So a lot of the competitive products on the market today are using camera equipment to look at your form that can be obscured sometimes by clothing. It has good fidelity, but we believe really what's transformative is more data, more intelligence, more points of measurement that can help us get very, very precise form feedback to you, almost as good as a personal trainer, if not better.
And the other thing, when you were talking, Jim, about the fact that even your cable company is making workout videos now, I mean, there are plenty of options out there for the person that's looking to work out on their own. You could go to your favorite fitness influencer, even if they have workout videos that they're posting on Instagram. You can have free videos on YouTube, and then there's Peloton, Lululemon, Equinox, SoulCycle, all of these are doing their home versions now. How is a consumer supposed to kind of cut through and figure out what's best for them? Because you're talking about personalized. Are you saying, I think even with personalized, there's going to be all kinds of different companies providing personalized services as well, right? So first, how is a consumer supposed to make this decision? And then secondly, how does Bowflex kind of see itself differentiating in just that space?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we think, it used to be we were a company that provided physical equipment, and that's where we competed. And we did it well, and we did it well for a long time. In the new world, essentially, we consider that consumers are going to gravitate to the very best experiences. And I'll define experiences as the equipment plus the software plus the content all together in a bundle. That's going to create a great experience, and we think people will gravitate to the experiences that they love. I wouldn't want to be just an app in the App Store providing just content. We like that we're anchored on our equipment, and that's kind of one of our first points of differentiation. When you have great equipment and it is now in connected fitness to give you the additional benefits that we've discussed, that's a big part of that. And then we're starting by really focusing on what our consumers are doing. And they're telling us, yeah, occasionally I use a live class, but more and more I want on demand. I want a lot of choice. I want multiple types of equipment, which is what we have in our portfolio. We're looking for brands that we know. We're glad that with Bowflex and Schwinn and Nautilus and now our Journey brand, these are more brands that people know, and that gives us a good competitive advantage as well. But we're very, very excited about being able to provide these types of personalized experiences for consumers.
Chris, I'm not going to ask you the same question because it feels like Tonal just exists in a bit more of a niche bubble at the moment with that personalized and 17 points of information thing. But I do want to ask you, and this I'll ask you too, Jim, later. What are some of the trends that you are seeing in the home fitness space? What are people gravitating towards?
Certainly social features, gamification, all of these things help drive engagement. The other thing that we're seeing on Tonal is a very organic and authentic interest from professional athletes. So Serena Williams is one of our original investors. We have Steph Curry, Michelle Wie in our most recent round, and we're actually bringing some of those professional athletes onto the platform and to be guest coaches and to drive content. So we think, in addition to our amazing stable of coaches that we have on the platform already, really bringing in high-profile talent will help take our content to the next level.
So the idea basically that people might make the decision based on the people and the athletes that they like, almost the thing I said about the influencers, is that right?
That's right. We have 6-time Ironman world champion Mark Allen teaching strength training for triathlon. And so if you're a triathlete looking for great content, it seems like an awesome solution for them.
If you're a triathlete, you might go with him. For me, I might try to CrossFit like Chris Hemsworth. That is definitely a trend I see people doing, is picking the people they like.
Absolutely.
Jim, what about you? Jim, what are some of the trends that you are seeing in the home fitness space?
Well, for sure, we know that there's a near-term opportunity to help displace gym goers with what they're missing at the gym. So, definitely the trend toward strength equipment, definitely having limited space and our products being able to fit in limited space is a big part of it. I think, in terms of the technology, being able to track your progress when you're on the machine, when you're off the machine, increasingly Journey is covering not only those scenarios where you're on your VeloCore bike, but also when you're off your VeloCore bike doing, yoga or kickboxing or things like that. People really like variety, and the technology can do that, but yet they do want to track their fitness capabilities and progress through that. I mean, these digital dashboards are terrific ways for people to feel like they're making progress and keep them at it longer. And that's really what fitness has always been about, and that's not a new thing. It's staying engaged. It's not grabbing onto a fad or anything like that, but it's just seeing progress, being able to stay with it. That's why we've added the entertainment. 94% of people who work out use some form of entertainment when they're working out. That's why we built it in, so that we can coach you and let you watch Netflix or Hulu or whatever you'd like.
I think that's a great point. I don't think I would be able to stay on a treadmill for too long if I wasn't watching an episode of The Walking Dead and pretending I'm running away from zombies. So I feel like that's definitely a good feature. You mentioned, though, that people like to track their fitness progress and progress towards their goals. And the way a lot of people, or at least I do that, is through my smartwatch, and I was curious, and, I'm pretty sure that at least on Bowflex's front, there has been some integration with Apple Watch and some of the other fitness watches out there already. But for both of you, and I'll start with you, Chris, what is the way you see Tonal integrating kind of the progress and feeding that data to something like an Apple Fitness platform, like based on the Apple Watch or the Fitness app, or through Google's, I guess, Wear OS, which after this we shall not talk about anymore, or any other smartwatches out there like Fitbit and Garmin?
Great question. We have a very strong relationship with Apple. We have integrations on both the app side and also the watch side. And back to the metric, we have something like Fitbit Steps, where we have something we call the Tonal Strength Score. And that's a number that is between 1 and 1,500. And people can increase their strength score the stronger that they get on the platform. And that's something that's easy to track, very, very motivating, and something that our members love.
Is there something similar with Bowflex's products, Jim?
Yeah, we're working on the same type of thing, some kind of fitness score. As it is today, we're tracking your typical metrics. We track, how often you work out, how long, calories burned, all those types of things. But, we're definitely working on something similar that brings it all together in a very easy to understand score, so that you know that you're making progress, and that keeps you encouraged and working at it much longer.
I do want to take a moment to, and this is a very slight tangent, but take a slight tangent to think about accessibility for a minute. I mean, I just had a panel earlier today about accessibility in tech, and I think that fitness technology is something that accessibility can often be overlooked. I'll start with you, Jim. In terms of making sure your products are inclusive and accessible by people with disabilities, whether they're low vision or hard of hearing, what are some of the considerations there in terms of product design?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that we start with is the equipment itself. And because we've had this broad portfolio of different types of equipment for a long time, let's just take bikes. Most people ride an upright IC bike, but a recumbent bike is a very important model. We have step-through models that allow you to more easily get on to do that. When we're designing the UI of Journey and our digital products, we're making sure that, whether you have your glasses on or you can't see as well, that is helpful. We also do voice coaching, which is, if you do have vision issues, is a big part of it as well. So we very much try to design that into both our physical and our digital products.
Chris, how about Tonal? Do you feel that the product is accessible for people with disabilities?
It is. Because of our digital weight technology, you can actually get into position and then on the handle turn the weight on and off. And this is especially resonant with physically challenged athletes. So we're actually supporting an athlete, Travis Gardner, who's competing in the Summer Olympics in a wheelchair. And he's raving about Tonal. It's transformed his workout routine and allowed him to get in better shape. He's already a gold medalist, so we'll be rooting him on this coming summer at the Olympics, and hoping that Tonal can play a big role in his progress.
And I know maybe you're both reluctant to talk about other companies, but as a whole in the industry, what are some areas in home fitness technology or just fitness technology even that can tend to overlook something like accessibility, right? Like where are some of the holes you think in home fitness that might not be as inclusive in terms of design? Let's start with you this time, Chris.
Well, one of the pleasant surprises of our business has been the fact that it's 50-50 men and women. Typically, strength training has been something that's been very much a male-dominated activity. And I think because of the knowledge, because of the accessibility, because of the fact that they can do it at home, women have really fallen in love with Tonal. And it's been a pleasure to see. And closing the strength training gender gap is something that's a big strategy of ours.
What about you, Jim? What do you see as some of the areas that might be overlooked?
Well, some of the brands that you see out there and some of the newer brands start at and I would do the same if I were starting a company. They start at the very top of the market. They depict their users as, absolutely perfectly cut in the $5 million condo overlooking the river in New York City. And when we talk to our customers, of course, those are not our customers. Some of those people are our customers, but they don't see themselves in those types of things. So I think when we look at the core market, I think being able to depict yourself in that scenario, there's got, advertising is a tricky thing. There's got to be enough of, I see myself in that person. So, it's not so different than I am. But there's also something aspirational in that. So, as we do our advertising and things like that, we try to be inclusive. We think some of maybe the other brands that are starting at products at $4,000 or $3,000 versus our portfolio that starts at $500, maybe excluding a lot of the mainstream people, whether they have disabilities or just straight up people who just can't afford what some of these other brands are charging.
I really agree with you there. I think body positivity and, diverse body image is one of the issues that has been sort of growing, if not already been around for a long time. And people seem to be starting to take notice of it. And you also rightly mentioned that cost and prohibitive costs can also get in the way of accessibility a lot of the time. And so this is hopefully something that other people watching this who are in the home fitness industry may be able to pay attention to. I do want to ask both of you one last question for our panel today. Time has just flown right by. But looking ahead for both of your companies, just about the industry, what do you think are some things we can expect in 2021 in home fitness? Let's start with you, Jim.
Yeah, first of all, we believe that the market size of home fitness has doubled between 19 and sometime in 21. I mean, we've been doing our strategic planning. We're betting on inventory. We're one of the few public companies, so people can see our growth rates on an already fairly big base. So we're already seeing that, and we see really we see that continuing through 2021. As I mentioned before, when we ask people, how are your habits going to change? First, 20 to 25% of people are still telling us that even when there's a vaccine, as there is today, and I get it, I'm still not going back to my gym. So you have to meet the needs of those displaced gym goers, as I mentioned. And the rest of 75, 80% are saying, I'm going to balance it between the gym and at home in different ways. So that's an important thing to help people with. So you think about what people want from the gym, what they need, and how you go back and forth between the two and how technology can help you with that. Those are some of the problems we're really focused on because we think there's just going to be a new normal. It's not going to be just 2021, but these are permanent changes in the industry structure. Many more competitors, obviously, and we hope brands really matter. We believe brands will really matter as well. So those are the things we're focused on going forward.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think there's going to be a lot more competition, which means more consumer choice. Chris, what do you think? What are you excited for looking ahead to 2021 in home fitness?
I think data and intelligence is really what's going to separate the winners and the losers. I think using data wisely to improve results is at the end of the day what matters. Along with the content side, we talked about making sure that content is entertaining and it's fun and inspiring to people who want to get fit and healthier.
I love that. And I think that that's a good note to end on. It looks like, the takeaway is that in 2021, we will mostly still be at home and embracing some sort of new normal as we maybe mix home fitness and going to the gym. I want to thank you both for taking out the time to talk to us today. Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Chris, for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right, and so that's it for our live program today on the CES 2021 digital stage here at Engadget. Make sure to come back tomorrow starting at 9 a.m. Eastern because we will still have another full day of content for you. And be sure to mark your calendars because tomorrow at 4:30 p.m. Eastern, we will have the Best of CES Awards show. So come back and we'll see you soon.